Good evening. The time is now 6:31 p.m. on Monday, February 12th, 2024. I call the Lexington Select Board to order. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format via the application Zoom, allowing remote public attendance. All members of the board are present in person. Members of the public can view and participate in the meeting from their device by clicking on the link provided in the meeting agenda. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. Further, this evening's meeting is being broadcast live and archived by Lex Media for future on-demand viewing. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. Members of the board are in person tonight. I'm Joe Pato, the board chair. Sitting on my right is Vice Chair. Excuse me. Yeah. Sitting on my right is Vice Chair Susie Barry, and on her right is Jill Hay. Sitting on my left is Doug Lucente, and on his left is Mark Sandine. Joining us from staff tonight are Jim Malloy, the town manager, Kelly Axtell, deputy town manager, and also joining us in person tonight is Kim Katzenbach, the select board executive clerk. Other staff members will be introduced as we get to their items. Tonight's meeting is a working session of the board, and we will not be taking general public comment. I would like to remind all participants, however, that we are neighbors and are working together for the best interests of the community. I ask that any comment be made with civility and respect and without casting aspersions or reference to motives. Tonight is a working session, but because we are running up to town meeting, there are some consent agenda items. We have 4 items on this evening's consent agenda. The first is an application for a one-day liquor license for the Rotary Club of Lexington at 1605 Massachusetts Avenue for the Lexington High School Scholarship Fundraiser. The second is to approve a collective bargaining agreement for the Cary Memorial Library Staff Association, Local 4928, MLSA, AFT-Mass, and AFL-CIO. This agreement had been previously ratified in executive session, and this is the public ratification of the agreement. The third is to accept select board committee resignations from the town celebrations committee. And the fourth is the application for a battle green permit for the Lexington Historical Society for the annual children's reenactment of the Battle of Lexington. Colleagues, are there any items members wish to consider individually? Ms. Barry.
Mr. Pato, I will be recused on number 2, so if you want to pull that one separately.
Sure. Oh, right, of course.
It's a reopener.
We will do this in 2 parts. Any others? Nope. Okay, so we will I'll move items 1, 3, and 4 as they appear on the consent agenda in the packet. Ms. Barry?
Second.
Then moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. None. It is unanimous, 5-0. I move the item number 2 to approve collective bargaining agreement. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. None. It is 4-0. Ms. Barry is recused. All right. This brings us to items for individual consideration. We will begin with awarding the sale of general obligation bonds. Ms. Kosnoff, the Assistant Town Manager for Finance, is here to guide us.
Thank you very much. So we are here tonight to approve the sale of $9.53 million of general obligation bonds. These went to sale last Wednesday. We received 13 very competitive bids. They were all within 7 basis points of each other, which was fantastic. And the low bid was 2.25%, which is a great rate, considering where rates have been lately. And that also included a premium of $1.2 million. So after resizing, the actual amount, our amount of the sale is $8.51 million. And just per usual, we did get a rating on this bond. It was done by Moody's, and they did, again, reaffirm the town's AAA bond rating. So per usual, there is a very long motion associated with this. There is also a lot of paperwork that will be signed after. I do want to note I had a mistake on the date of the closing. I thought it was this Wednesday. It is actually next Wednesday. So we do have a little bit of time, but I will still ask that the board approve that tonight. And just, this was for a variety of projects. The sale, one of the biggest pieces of it was the Battle Green Streetscape project that was going on, but it also included a few facilities projects and a few water and sewer projects as well.
Thank you, Ms. Kosnov. Colleagues, are there any questions about this bond sale? Seeing none, I'm going to take off my mask to get through this because I'm pretty sure I need water. All right. I move, we hereby determine in accordance with General Law Chapter 70B that the cost of each of the following school projects, each being financed with proceeds of a portion of the bonds, together with all other bonds and notes of the town previously issued to pay costs of each project, does not exceed the portion of the total cost of each project that is not being paid by each project's respective school facilities grant. And we hereby approve the issuance of notes and bonds to finance each project under General Law Chapter 70B. Project Hastings Schools construction with an authorization date of October 16th, 2017, Article 2, and Project Lexington High School feasibility with an authorization date of April 11th, 2022, Article 2. And further, that the sale of the $8,510,000 general obligation municipal purpose loan of 2024 bonds of the town dated February 22nd, 2024, the bonds, to Bancroft Capital LLC at the price of $9,624,557.81 and accrued interest, if any, is hereby approved and confirmed. The bonds shall be payable on February 1st of the years and in the principal amounts and bear interest at the respective rates as follows. Year 2025 amount $965,000, interest rate 5%. 2026 amount $940,000, 5%. 2027 $940,000, 5%. 2028 $940,000, 5%. 2029, $925,000, 5%. 2030, $765,000, 5%. 2031, $760,000, 5%. 2032, $760,000, 5%. 2033, $760,000, 5%. 2034, $755,000, 5%. And further, that in connection with the marketing and sale of the bonds, the preparation and distribution of a notice of sale and preliminary official statement dated January 31st, 2024, and a final official statement dated February 7th, 2024, the official statement, each in such form as may be approved by the town treasurer, be and hereby are ratified, confirmed, approved, and adopted. And further, that the town treasurer and the select board be and hereby are authorized to execute and deliver a continuing disclosure undertaking in compliance with SEC Rule 15C2-12 in such form as may be approved by bond counsel to the town, which undertaking shall be incorporated by reference in the bonds for the benefit of the holders of the bonds from time to time. And further, that we authorize and direct the town treasurer to establish post-issuance federal tax compliance procedures and continuing disclosure procedures in such forms as the town treasurer and bond counsel deem sufficient, or if such procedures are currently in place, to review and update said procedures in order to monitor and maintain the tax-exempt status of the bonds and to comply with relevant securities laws. And further, that any certificates or documents relating to the bonds, collectively the documents, may be executed in several counterparts, each of which shall be regarded as an original and all of which shall constitute one and the same document. Delivery of an executed counterpart of a signature page to a document by electronic mail in a PDF file or by other electronic transmission shall be as effective as delivery of a manually executed counterpart signature page to such document. And electronic signatures on any of the documents shall be deemed original signatures for the purposes of the documents and all matters relating thereto, having the same legal effect as original signatures. And further, that each member of the select board, the town clerk, and the town treasurer be and hereby are authorized to take any and all such actions and execute and deliver such certificates, receipts, or other documents as may be determined by them or any of them to be necessary or convenient to carry into effect the provisions of the foregoing votes. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. None. It is unanimous, 5-0. Thank you. So colleagues, this brings us to item number 2, which is annual town meeting. And Mrs. Axtell, could you start us off? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Pato. So tonight we have all the citizen petitions that are looking to come forward for annual town meeting. And first up, we have Article 31 with Mr. Wanderer, if you want to come to the table. Mr. Wanderer will give you an overview about the motion and answer any questions. Thank you.
So the motion is motion.
Not yet. There.
The motion is to the proposal is to ban the sale of single-use water bottles within the town of Lexington, less than one liter. The purpose of this proposal is the reason for this proposal is to prevent waste, degradation of the environment, and so forth. I want to say that who else is doing it? Like 24 other Massachusetts communities have similar bylaws in effect, including Concord, Needham, and all of Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. It's also something that's happening around the country, New York, California, Oregon, as well as Europe and China, Kenya, and Chile. Chile all have proposals similar to this. I feel that this bylaw aligns with Lexington's goals because we in Lexington have an environmentally conscious community, and this aligns well with that goal. Question is, do residents recycle their bottles? No. It's estimated that 20% of all plastics are actually recycled. The rest is burnt or landfilled or shipped to third world countries where I've seen it. It just sits in landfills. There was one bay in Vietnam that I could have walked across because there were so many plastic bottles. Disposal of the waste our waste in Lexington goes to incinerator, which is in a less affluent community where they suffer the effects of air pollution and water pollution. So what can the businesses do? They can sell bottles of water in aluminum containers. They can give plastic cups of water away to their customers. They can also sell reusable bottles and have that as another profit center. I checked with another number of establishments, including Via Lago and Qdoba, among others, and they both have water freely available to customers who just want it. Any questions?
Colleagues, questions about this proposed article? Ms. Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Pato. So how extensive has your outreach been to businesses? And I know some like chains, grocery stores, and so forth would be familiar with this because it's happening in other communities, as you mentioned. But have you gone to any more than just the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 you mentioned on the sheet we got tonight?
No.
Okay. So I'm going to suggest that you do some more outreach. I'm not saying I'm necessarily opposed to this article. I'm not necessarily saying that you're going to get pushback from anyone, but I think for this to come up at town meeting, and that's the first time people are really hearing about it, is not necessarily a good thing. So I think you need to do some more outreach.
Okay.
And I was a little bit struck when you do your next presentation. I'm not sure I would say they can go into a business and get a plastic cup full of water if you're looking to ban plastic.
Good point.
Colleagues, other questions or comments? Mr. Lucente, then Ms.
Oh,
Hay.
sorry. Oh, so thank you for the presentation. One of the concerns I think I have on this is about the clarification of giving away and selling, right? Because I'm not sure, and maybe we can get a clarification. I read the motion And I'm just now seeing the presentation for the first time, so I'm trying to digest this as well. But I'd love some clarification on the ban, if it's giving it away or just the sale. Because people, I run an event every July, and it's very warm, and there's a lot of water consumption at that event, and it's not water that's available on site. It's, has to get there somehow. And cans of water are good, but they're extremely heavy. And so on occasion we give away plastic bottles, to folks so that they can hydrate, so that they don't pass out. Particularly, we have a July youth games thing. And so anyway, I was just curious if we get clarification on the giving away or the sale. And if that's cleared up, maybe town council has weighed in on it, but I would love some response to that. You don't have to give it to me right now, but some.
The proposal specifies the sell.
Only the sale. Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification.
Ms. Hay?
So let me just follow up for 1 second, though. I hadn't thought about this before, but if you're saying it's okay to distribute the water bottles, but not to sell them, means that somebody who's having an event and wants to be able to distribute water bottles would then simply just have to go to Bedford Stop and Shop instead of the Lexington Stop and Shop, because the Stop and Shop is also prohibited? Or is it just in the context of restaurants?
I suspect they would have to go to Bedford to buy the bottles.
All right. Thank you. That actually wasn't where I was originally going when I had said I wanted to talk. That I had a comment that it may be useful to. There are other water bottle filling stations in a lot of our buildings now. The library has one. There's one in the hall here. There's different places. So rather than just the two that you have listed here, I think it might be helpful if perhaps you could speak to a few of the different building operators and expand that list, because we do have more options, actually. As someone who carries this around with me everywhere, I've found about half a dozen or more on my daily route, and I think you might as well strengthen the argument here by making it clearer to people that it's easier to fill them than just having two options.
Thank you.
Mr. Sandine?
So thank you for this. I really appreciate the thought behind this in terms of we do have a plastic crisis and we need to start addressing what to do about our plastic. And not mentioned in your presentation, but we're seeing that it's not only bad for the environment, but it's bad for our health as well to be drinking from these plastic bottles. And so I appreciate all the reasons that you have for doing this. I do have some questions mainly for the town manager, because the motion talks a lot about enforcement and the town manager's determination of implementation of this enforcement. And so I was wondering what your thoughts are, or what the town's thoughts are in terms of how this would be enforced, and what part of the town's staff would be responsible.
Well, it would be through probably the health department when they actually go out and do inspections of different restaurants and other businesses.
And the last section of the bylaw says if the town manager determines the cost is become unreasonable. What's your perspective? Has staff weighed in on whether this would be a difficult thing to enforce?
We have not had that discussion now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify also, we talked about single-use bottles. Does that apply for bulk sales of packaged, grouped, so like when you go to Stop and Shop and get a couple of dozen bottles as a single purchase, does that apply, or is it only when you're buying one bottle at a time?
I believe it applies to all sale of single-use plastic bottles.
I think it'd be helpful, Mr. Malloy, if we can get clarification on that, whether or not town council agrees or if the wording needs adjustment. From a presentation perspective, you may have said it, but I don't see it in the writing. if you could report on the effectiveness of the bylaw in the communities around us that have adopted similar bylaws. And you cite here are the towns that have, but I think the question will be in people's minds if they haven't been paying direct attention, did it do any good, right? So if you could build that into your presentation, forestall some questions. Ms. Hay, you.
I realized I had one other thought when I first looked at this. I'm sorry, I forgot. Somewhere short-term pre-pandemic, and apologies for not remembering what year was which, but probably 2019 or so, the mock town meeting question that the school kids did, the middle schoolers did, was exactly this: banning plastic single-use bottles in town. And they did a lot of research, and they, debated it. It may be worth reaching out to the organizers of the mock town meeting, because you may find that you have a lot of resources available and a lot of passionate, now high schoolers who may be able to help you with some of this research as well.
Okay, thank you.
Colleagues, any other comments or questions? Seeing none, Mr. Wanderer, thank you. And we will see you at town meeting.
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Axtell.
Thank you. Next up is Article 40. Marci Cemenska is going to be here to answer any questions that you have about the integrated pest control. Thank you. Pest management, excuse me.
So colleagues, this one is one we were able to view in advance. So questions? I'm giving my colleagues a moment to get on the same page. Mr. Sandine?
I don't have any questions for the proponent. I think this is a fabulous thing to do, and I hate to make a Super Bowl joke, but on the day after Superb Owl Day, for those who celebrate, I applaud your picture of a superb owl here. So I do think we need to be doing something to address this issue of our raptors, our local pets, and our children from being affected by this rat poison, and do think it's a good idea for the town to start taking action in that regard. I do believe, Mr. Malloy, though, that our DPW staff already has an integrated pest management process in place, and I was wondering if our town staff has any thoughts about this.
We've not had any discussion with the town staff on this.
Okay. So that's my only thought. I do think it's something that would be a good thing to do for the town, and would love to hear. I do believe our town staff is on this topic and has taken action on this in the past, and I just want to make sure that's part of our presentation going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Sandine. Ms. Hay?
Thank you. So thank you for bringing this forward. I appreciate it. I did notice and I can't find it right now, but in something I was reading of your materials beforehand, possibly in the official materials and possibly in something you posted. But you mentioned that some of the pest control companies out there will represent that they are not using this, but that's not necessarily accurate. Is there a way that you can incorporate some information so that residents will understand what questions they need to ask to confirm that they are not using companies that are going to be in violation of this?
We can definitely do that. The interesting thing is in the state, pest control companies aren't even exactly obligated to tell you exactly what they're putting in these boxes or to put labels. But I do think that it should be possible to write a document that would say, as a homeowner, I do not want these chemicals on my property. And I would think that if you find that those chemicals are on your property, that there'd be some recourse for the homeowner. We actually have a member of our team whose neighbor dealt with that situation exactly. So
I think that would be very helpful
Yeah.
to be able to offer along with this, just
Yes.
some resources. So thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Lucente.
Just a comment. Thank you for bringing this up because I do think this is one of those awareness situations that people aren't aware and they don't understand. And any of us like myself that has a little pet, you know how dangerous, just the wrong little small thing being ingested can be and can, kill your beloved animals, never mind animals in the wildlife. So I think, this is sort of a step in the right direction to bring awareness and hopefully, you can continue your advocacy and, make homeowners aware. I think the lawn signs have helped actually a lot, bring the issue to the forefront, but this will definitely be another step in the right direction. And, I did see in the presentation, the alternates. I actually had to have my dog's stomach pumped because she accidentally ingested vitamin D pill. So that's a dangerous one,
Yeah.
but some of the alternatives are also dangerous to animals, I guess is my point. So
That is true. Getting in the vitamin D pesticide is definitely dangerous for pets. And there was I believe it was a boxer that in west of here that actually, I believe, died recently from doing that.
yeah, but thank you very much for bringing this up.
So I want to echo the thanks, and I want to make two observations. One is pesticide management is not a local issue. It is a local issue, but it is much more than a local issue. Certainly for our raptors, our flying raptors, they don't pay any attention to town boundaries. So it is something that as a region we need to address, but as a community, we can't fix the region without start working on our own issues. The second observation I want to make is this is a resolution. So it will express the desire and will of the community, but it doesn't enforce change. It'll still be up to individual homeowners to choose to adhere to these practices. So this is, as Mr. Lucente said, a good first step to move forward. And hopefully we will see a wave of change so that this issue abates.
So actually, this resolution is this for town-owned land. Yeah.
Understood,
Yeah,
right? But
yeah.
but the expression of the interest is something that I think is available for the community as a whole to absorb and
Correct.
and strive to adhere to.
Correct.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I want to thank you for your work, and we will see you at town meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I just wanted to make a note, Article 41 has been rescheduled to March 4th, so that will be coming in front of you at that time. So next up, we have Diane Pursley, who will present on Article 42. Again, she'll be here for questions that you may have about the article.
So colleagues, again, we have had prior access, and I'll just start by saying this is a no-brainer. It boggles my mind that the legislature hasn't acted to join the 20th century, let alone the 21st, and that the sad decline of printed media is something that we can lament for many reasons, but is the requirement to post our notices there is at this stage completely ineffectual. So I'm glad you're bringing it forward, and I hope the legislature would act on any such home rule petition. Colleagues. Mrs. Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Pato. So I'm just curious because you split this into select board and school committee. If you've been to speak to the school committee yet?
I actually didn't split it. The town council did.
Okay.
So I didn't even think of that. I can definitely talk to the school committee.
Do we? Oh, it's split into select board has to take a vote and school committee has to take a vote. And she said town council put that into the motion. So I'm just curious if we know why.
I would have to go back and look at my notes as to why.
Okay. And then I was just curious what the school committee thought of this, because this would be a new duty for them, correct?
Why would it be a new, it's just a redirect of where they would put their public notices, which they do already.
They determine where they put their public notices separate from where we do, or do we just put them all in the same place?
I think they probably decide where to put their public notices.
And it could just be that we're both doing the same place. So I guess my concern would be that it be clear that kind of the select board has a conversation with the school committee. So we're putting them all in the same place, and that we don't pick two and they pick two different ones. So then people get confused. That's the point I was trying to get to.
Okay.
In a roundabout way. Sorry about that.
Right, no, Ms. Barry, and I think town council will need to answer, but I think there is legislation that mandates, that specifies school committee for certain things and select board for others, but let's.
Yeah, that was also kind of where I was getting to.
Your point of let's make sure we are
Right.
working together is a good one, and we should follow
But
up.
my other part, and it's for Ms. Hay, because she was kind of had an inside track on this. Wasn't there something pending somewhere, State House or something?
It's included in the Municipal Empowerment Act, which is, going to drag its way through the legislature because they drag everything. But with any luck, it will actually get into effect this year. But we can't count on that, so there's no reason not to move forward on both. And I know I had connected Ms. Pursley actually with the MMA, who is, the legislative team who is advocating on this as well.
Okay. I just want to check on that because I know in the past we've raised this at the table and said, they're working on it, let's wait. But they're not working very quickly.
As is often the case.
Yeah.
And, but I think it doesn't hurt us any to have put on the table the fact that as a community, we are in need.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm fully supportive. I would just suggest, since it's a school committee in there, you at least have a conversation with their chair.
So should I do that? Or? Okay.
Ms. Hay?
So I also just want to add another avenue, which is that at the we just discussed this at the Magic Meeting, which is our regional MAPC group, and it came out that Acton has received some sort of dispensation. They are able to use what's called the Acton Exchange or the Action Exchange. I couldn't catch which it was over Zoom, but they said that they weren't allowed to use that, which is a electronically delivered newspaper, and it is possibly because they have absolutely no alternative, but the staff people from Acton said that, anybody could contact them directly. If you want to go through the town manager's office, I would suggest just finding out exactly what permission they got and how they were able to do that. Because I will say all of our neighbors got very excited about that, and we're all interested in how they're doing that. And I mentioned at that point that, we had this bill or this resolution pending, but I think it would be worth talking to them.
Right, this would be a home rule petition, and Ms. Axtell just wants to say there's a typo, it looks like. Okay. Mr. Sandine and then Mr. Lucente.
Okay. So I agree, it's a wonderful thing to do. Thank you for bringing it forward. I did have, reading the motion, I just had a couple of questions. And if I'm reading it correctly, you've got these 5 places that we can post, A, B, C, D, and E. And if I'm reading it correctly, we would be required to post in 2 of those. Is that how I'm reading this correctly? At least that's the way I read this thing, that it must be posted in 2 of.
I think. Let's see.
It said shall determine at least 2 of the means of legal. So we have to post in 2 places. Is that how this is worded? It says section 3A at the end, it says by majority vote shall determine at least 2 of the means of legal notices set forth to satisfy publication requirements. So it left me wondering if it was okay just to publish on the town website, or whether you had to publish on the town website and one of the other of the 5.
I'm flexible on that. I think the intent is that you want to make sure you get it widely publicized. So if we put it on the town website and then one other place, the objective is to obviously widely publicize it.
Mr. Sandine, I think actually in section 2, it says that in order, the publication requirement is one or more of the following means. Section 3 is the local authorization. I think we have to authorize at least 2 that will satisfy it, but the actual publication only has to appear in one. That's how I read it. But I'm not the town council. I would suggest that we confirm with town council, but I think that that's the intention of the drafting.
Well, that sounds a whole lot better than I read it. So thank you. So I appreciate that, and I do think we should move forward. The only other question I have is, does the state have a website that they maintain for this? There's that section D in here of the. Is there such a thing right now in existence, or is this like a hopeful thing that may occur in the future?
Mr. Malloy?
There is a central register, which you could put almost any advertisement in, but nobody reads it other than people who are looking at RFPs or bidding on projects.
But does statewide necessarily mean owned by the Commonwealth, or does it just mean a website that can be viewed statewide? Yeah. I'm not a lawyer.
So any other questions, Mr. Lucente?
Just, I appreciate this because I think we are so out of sync with reality on this one. We in the past, we've talked about, paper or no paper. I think for other things, there is some benefit to things showing up in the mail, warrants and things, because we've talked about, pushing that. But what we've heard from the community in some of our age-related studies is that a lot of folks still prefer and don't necessarily all have access to, the equal amount of information online. Many do, and I'm not denying that, but I think for a lot of folks, that mail is the only way they get it. This is ridiculous because it requires you to have a subscription to something that nobody really subscribes to anymore. So I think it's a good change, and I appreciate you bringing it up because it does solve a lot of the timing problems too, for we to get it published by this date. And if it's not and you miss it, then oh no, so it would make us more efficient as a government organization to be able to respond quickly. So thank you.
All right. I think we are set. Thank you for bringing this forward, and we will see you later.
Thank you.
Ms. Axtell.
Thank you. Next up is Article 43, Voting Rights of 16 and Older. Kunal Botla will be here to answer any questions on that.
Welcome, colleagues. Again, we have had access to the materials in advance. Mr. Lucente.
So thank you. I think, and I may not be in the majority on this one, but I think this is a great idea. I'm excited about this. I have been thinking about this since 1991 because I honestly, I thought when I was 16, because I thought we have a lot of, Lexington is blessed with a lot of very, very smart adults and a lot of very, very smart children or people under 18. So I think it really it's a great idea. I do think it speaks to the engagement. We want to engage people before they head off to college. And I think what I've seen with my own family situation is they go off to college and all this local voting stuff is happening in Lexington and they're not connected to it anymore for the first time they get to vote. If you get them hooked on voting early, they'll hopefully bring it with them for the future. So thank you for bringing this forward. I strongly support this idea.
Ms. Barry.
Mr. Malloy, has there been a conversation with Ms. D'Alderetti as to if her office is able to handle this, or would this create a significant burden for them?
I've mentioned it to her. We've had a very brief conversation, and she's looking at what the effect would be for her office at this time.
Okay, that would be helpful since it says the office of the town clerk will establish the list. Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Hay?
So I'm going to sort of pile on with Mr. Vicente in the thank yous. And I will say that I worked on my first presidential campaign as a 17-year-old. I was going door to door, not able to vote yet. And I will not tell you which election that was. So I think this is great. And I really want to thank you very much.
Right. And I think this is an interesting and important area to pursue, if not for any other reason than it is important for younger adults to develop the habit of voting. And I know I have done some of the background work to help with student registration and know what it takes to look through the databases to find those 17-year-olds that are eligible. 16-year-olds would add one other cohort, but the 17-year-olds is public information. And I am looking forward to seeing what the assessment is, but I wouldn't expect it to be a significant hardship. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Sandy.
I also think this is a great idea. And yes, I do think we have a lot of smart 16 and 17-year-olds that can help inform our decisions and will make for a stronger and hopefully maybe even encourage some younger folks to serve on town meeting as well. So I do appreciate that. And in talking to my colleagues in other towns that have passed this, they are very supportive and felt that it went well in their communities as well.
So, and I'm going to add one more comment, which is, I know that the Vision for Lexington committee has a subcommittee working on voter participation, and I don't know where they are yet, but I would suspect that, like participation in recycling and other activities, having an enthusiastic younger cohort that wants to vote may actually induce some parents to go out and vote as well. So with luck, this would increase our voter turnout in general. So colleagues, anything else? Mr. Botla, thank you.
I have a note on Ms. Berry's question. The Secretary of the Commonwealth has a system for maintaining who is 16 and 17 and eligible to vote, and it appears that some other municipalities have tried using that as kind of their infrastructure, so less is on the municipality itself.
That's good news. Thank you.
Thanks.
Right, because 16-year-olds can pre-register to vote. So there is a process. All right, well, thank you. And we will
Thank you.
Move on to the next item.
Thank you. So the next item is Article 45, Indigenous People Day, and the citizen petitioner is Fran Ludwig.
I'd also like Stephanie and Lincoln to. Stephanie Ryan and her son Lincoln.
So Ms. Ludwig is bringing Stephanie Ryan and her son to Lincoln to join her in fielding the board's questions.
Okay.
So colleagues, what questions do we have or comment? Ms. Barry.
So I'm going to guess this is for Mr. Malloy or Ms. Extel. So this is a citizen's petition, a non-binding resolution, but would this actually change what we call the holiday on the town calendar? The library's always already changed it to Indigenous People Day. Would it change it on the town calendar or not?
I believe it would, because it says that it shall henceforth be commemorated in Lexington as Indigenous Peoples Day.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hay?
Thank you. I've been waiting for this. I actually was rewatching one of our meetings from a couple months ago to find something else and found myself saying, it actually was talking, when we were talking about the holidays of, recognition, and I said I couldn't bring myself to continue calling it strictly Columbus Day. So thank you, because I was told we hadn't made the change yet. So I'm ready. Thank you.
It goes back longer than a few months.
No, well, that I've been saying it. That's true.
Yeah.
Mr. Sandy?
I appreciate you bringing this forward as well. And I also appreciate now knowing how to pronounce Massachusetts.
Any other comments? No? I think we are set then. Thank you. Sorry that there weren't more of a grilling opportunity.
Thank you very much.
And possibly town meeting will be as brief.
Okay.
I shouldn't have said that.
Well, thank you very much. It was very exciting. We have the young youth here, part of it.
You took a picture in this direction. You want us to take a picture of you at the table?
I'm such a little, like, it's exciting for us because as Indigenous people, like, this is potentially like changing something. So yes, can we totally like take a? You want to come up? I do love you. Thank you. Yeah, we're gonna come back.
So my colleagues have taken over the meeting. No. This is fine. We will take a momentary recess to allow this picture.
Oh, I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, no. It's very
You know what else Fran did? She did back there.
I know.
We came as a volunteer in the schools, and I met our school. Thank you. Thanks for having so much. Sorry, I appreciate it.
No, my solution of clipping from the video feed wouldn't have been a good one. All right, so I bring us back to order, and we will move to the next item is Axtell.
Thank you. So the next item is select board discussion about the articles. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. So colleagues, we have at our table a position spreadsheet in print in color, which is helpful. At our last meeting, I'd asked you each to send Ms. Katzenbach your positions on those articles that you were already familiar with. I know that there are a lot of weights, and the weights are not an indication that there's opposition, just that an individual hasn't had the time to really formulate their final position or their position. I am going to walk us through this, and so that we each get to see and the public gets to see where we are, and then give you the opportunity to provide some commentary if you want. Remember that staff will be writing the first drafts of our position statements, so commentary can be helpful. Ms. Barry.
And if we're a wait, you would like to hear what else we need to make our decision, correct? Because that was the homework. So I made notes on mine. I don't know if those got passed on, but if I can find them, I can tell you what they were.
Good. All right, so let's start with financial articles. And the operating budget, we were all waits on, and we were just waiting for the final presentation. I'm speaking for all of you. Next one is enterprise fund budgets, which Mr. Lucente?
Can we go back? I'm sorry. Can we go back to Cary lecture series?
Sure.
So, yes. Sorry, where I didn't fill in, I was a wait, but I'll try to clarify some now.
All right. Yes, I should have allowed that. And Mr. Santine, are you ready on that one, or?
I was just hoping to have a little bit more time to reflect on the whole totality of things. So if I could just listen tonight, I'd appreciate.
Sure, that's fine. If there is something that you think you might be in know or want discussion at town meeting, voice that, because Ms. Axtell is putting together candidate consent agenda. And I mentioned that because this particular article typically is on the consent agenda. All right. So we are at enterprise funds, Article 5.
Yeah, I can change to a yes on that. This is one of those we're rarely a no, but it's the final motion and all that.
I went with what was in the white book. I'm assuming there's no changes.
Yeah, I just waited on the financial articles until we heard the presentation tonight. If there was any, that was basically my thinking.
That's my thinking as well. I expect to be a yes on all these, but I was just want final.
All right. So maybe as a group,
You wait.
We'll wait on, I'll wait on the group. Again, I was blank on most of them.
All right. Should I skip financial? Let's skip those down. Let's go down to the CPA. And I think we all are there except for Mr. Sandine.
Just a
You're all-
reminder on 10A,
You are,
I'd like to do the presentation.
yes.
Thank you.
And we are all yeses on all of the CPA sub-items. And Mr. Sandine, you were asking for time. I'm assuming you want time on this as well.
On 10F, as a CPC member, I voted no on 10F.
And you want to put a no here. Okay, that's fine. All right. We have capital for recreation. I have this under finance. So I'm going to skip all of the municipal capital as well.
So on my sheet, the two that I'm a wait on, I had a couple of questions. I don't know if those got passed on, Ms. Katzenbach. Okay.
Do you want to express those or would you just go ahead?
Hold on. 12G, townwide signalization improvements. It talked about, I think it was Lowell in North, and maybe it was Lowell in East. And it talked about they knew what the redesigned intersection was going to look like. And something about we got a bottleneck grant to help fund that. I just didn't know what a bottleneck grant. Oh, hi, Dave, Mr. Pinstow.
The Lindsay will be on for the next item and he can.
Or just send me an email, it's fine. I mean, it's more curiosity. Yeah, or send the email to the office, yeah. And then on J, the public parking lot improvement project, it mentioned the library lot. I just want to make sure that the library was aware that the library is in this article and Ms. Stembridge is aware. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hay?
And actually, to that point, the integration of doing that library parking lot at a time when we're about to be doing some significant renovations in the library in the short term as well, and whether that timing is correct.
All right. Moving on to water improvements. Mr. Malloy.
I could answer what a local bottleneck grant is. It's something that through the Department of Transportation that allows municipalities to partner with regional transit agencies or other regional associations to develop ways to alleviate bottlenecks in traffic. So it's just a state grant. It's actually a Massachusetts state grant, not a US DOT grant.
So the wastewater and 13 water system and 14 wastewater. There are 3 yeses on this. Mr. Lucente, you're
Where are we? At the bottom.
13 and 14.
Page 2.
I can be a yes on 13 and 14.
And Mr.
I just
Sandine
need
as
to
well?
look at I need to look at 15 again.
Okay, so 15 school capital. We're going to a little more work for each of us. Number 16, public facilities capital.
But if I could just be a wait on those, I appreciate it.
Yep. And I and Ms. Barry and Ms. Hay are yeses on these. And Mr. Sandine, do you want to just continue waiting?
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to 17, OPEB. And that's right. And Ms. Barry is recused, and we'll get the rest financed later tonight. Prior authorizations. Rescinding prior authorizations.
I'm just gonna wait on 16. I'm sorry.
18.
18, 19, 20, 21, and 22, because they're all
Yeah.
budgetary items.
Okay, we're all waits on 19 through 22. 23 is appropriate for opioid settlement.
That I can be a yes because it's
Yeah,
freeze fixed.
there's nothing it's not really optional.
Mr. Sandine, I think, wants to be yes on that too.
Right, so we are all yeses on 23.
We can write the motion of the.
Just had Doug.
Yeah.
Tell him. I'm gonna do that. I'll be fine.
Okay, 24, appropriate for semi-quincentennial commission. We are 4 yeses. Mr. Sandine, you were a wait still.
I would support this.
You would, okay, so you're now a yes.
I really should wait until I get through.
Yeah, so Mr. Sandine, could you turn on your mic?
I said I should really wait till I get through the entire thing, but yes, a number of these I have no problem with.
So you're a yes on this one. And I've been asking you not because I'm trying to pressure you into making a decision, just if you had some, it's helpful. Okay. 25 is the Pine Meadows Clubhouse renovation.
I'm gonna be a wait.
Right, and the other 4 of us are waits. Ms. Barry's a yes. Right, she's been in the thick of it. Number 26 is design funds for the high school construction project.
Yes.
And Mr. Sandine, do you want more time?
Well, no, I think we should high school project.
So you need to speak into your mic.
Yes.
Okay. So yes, you are in favor of this, not yes, you're waiting. Okay. Number 27 is appropriate for the renovation of 173 Bedford Street. There are 4 waits, and I am a yes. Anybody ready?
I'd stay as a wait, or if I could change mine to a wait from blank.
Sure.
We're waiting for information, correct? That's due back
There's,
at our next meeting. Yeah.
moving to general articles. Article 28, Select Board to accept easements.
I'll stay as a wait.
Right, and these are easements with no cost to the town. There's no financial.
I want to
Yeah.
look at it.
No, just making sure we're all aware of the limitations of what these easements are. They're not broad. Number 29, which is the noise bylaw, in 2 parts to be voted on independently. On part A, which is the construction noise clarifications, I'm a yes, and there are 4 waits.
So on the original sheet that was emailed to us, there was only one, it was just all lumped as one as 29. There wasn't an A and D.
Yes, I sent a correction in. So for your, right, for your
Okay.
benefit,
But I'm still a wait on both. Yeah, okay.
that's fine. And right, at town meeting, we were going to have this up for independent votes. And the original table had missed that. The second part is the commercial gas leaf blower prohibition delay. And we have Mr. Lucenti, who's a yes, and the 4 of us are waits. Any changes?
Were we waiting on information on that one?
We've been presented with information when we chose to keep this on the warrant. I think some of us expressed an interest in hearing the discussion at town meeting, and also, there's another month and a half before this will come up, I think, and more clarity on availability of equipment.
I thought you were waiting for that. I thought that was something you asked for, like an update on availability. I could be wrong.
So we had a presentation on the
Right, but
availability.
after that, I thought you were looking for, or maybe Mr. Sandine was looking for an update on availability closer to town meeting time.
I'm not sure what my position was at the time. I do think I do think that the information that was presented to us wasn't specifically about the availability of the equipment. So at least that's the impression that's my recollection. I may not be remembering correctly, but that's my recollection.
So what I'm hearing is that we remain waits, and the primary concern on B is the availability. All right.
I was a yes on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Moving to item 30, which we heard tonight.
We didn't hear 30 tonight,
No, I'm sorry. Yes.
but it's a citizen's petition.
And this is.
This one's going to be coming to us.
This is,
No.
Ms.
It's okay.
Axtell, yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Article 30 is IP'd. Article 31 replaced Article 30. We can't withdraw a citizen petition.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So it will be IP'd.
so I'm a yes on the IP.
Yes.
Yes, so we are yeses across the board.
Yes.
Okay. 31 we heard tonight, which
Can
is
can it be identified that it is IP'd in the?
in the next version of the,
So, Mr. Pato, could you explain what IP is to all the people sitting in the back who suddenly started whispering about what's an IP?
right, IP is indefinitely postponed, which is the terminology we use for this article. No motion is coming forward on this article. It's dead moving forward. 31, single serve plastic water bottles. We heard that tonight.
I'm going to stay I would like to be a wait on that. I want to hear from the impacted parties a little bit more.
Okay, we are all waits right now. Anybody change? So I'm sympathetic, but I'm a wait right now. I do want to hear a little bit more about, what was the experience in our neighboring communities? Because I've read some things in the press, but I wanted a little more concrete
So
context.
just blank on me doesn't mean wait. It means I was waiting for a presentation.
Okay,
So I am a wait.
so we are 5 waits. Moving on to number 32, which we haven't, this is Old Spring Street name change. We have 3 yeses, Ms. Barry, Mr. Lucente, and Ms. Hay. I was a wait, but I am a yes. When I sent this in, I hadn't had a chance to read it. And Mr. Sandina, have you?
This is the presentation we had, 3 months ago, something along that lines?
Right.
Yes, I'm okay with this.
So we have 5 yeses. 33 is to authorize the Affordable Housing Trust to seek affordable housing.
I am a yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Oh, yes.
so we have 5 yeses. I was a wait on this, but and again, this does not set a project in motion. This is the first step of setting the land as eligible for affordable housing and a process for moving forward. Item 34, amend general bylaws, tree bylaw, tree protection plan. We have 3 yeses. I'm a yes, Mr. Lucenti's a yes, Ms. Hayes a yes, Ms. Barry's a yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Pato. Sorry to interrupt. Updated motions were uploaded today. So I wanted to make sure the select board was aware. It was what was presented at this board that they were updating the motions, but those motions did not get updated until today.
For
And
which articles?
For 34,
tree.
35, and 36, the tree articles. So just wanted to make sure you knew those were the new motions. They're final. The tree committee has voted on them, and both the slides and the videos have also been updated.
Could I just clarify? So Ms. Axtell, are you saying what was presented to us is the same as what is in the motions now? Or was there some change from what was presented to us the other day?
The information in your packet was an older version. When they came and they spoke with you, they spoke about these motions that are now up on the webpage. So there's a little bit of a change in some of the wording.
Right, so our discussion with them was reflective of the current finalized wording. What we had available to us prior to the meeting was the previous version. If you want to wait, that's
I'm a wait.
That's fine.
And could I ask Mr. Pinsino his thoughts, if he's looked at these, if there's any concerns?
Yes, we reviewed these and are okay with the amended motions.
Thank you. So I would be a yes then.
Okay. For 35, which is the requiring mitigation plans. Ms. Vicente, you're away. Do you want to remain away?
I'll stay away.
Okay. And Mr. Sandin?
I would be a yes on all of the
Tree ones.
the ones that Mr. Pinsino just spoke about.
Okay. And Ms. Barry, I assume you want to say wait on all of these until you
just
get a
wanna read
chance
the
to read
motion,
it. Yeah, no, that's perfectly reasonable. So item 37, which is the importance of trees, a resolution.
I'm in support of this.
I am a yes. This has not changed.
I'm going to stay away. One of the pieces of information I've been mulling over is I think I mentioned this, but what are the obligations that will come out of this resolution? Although it's a non-binding resolution, I want to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for failure. And that we've, it's words on paper, but we take this very seriously. And I want to make sure that we know what budgetary obligations we may have or what changes that we need to make in the real world.
Ms. Hay?
Yes. So just building on that, I guess I would have the same question for Mr. Pinsino. There are some specific lines of resolution in here that create obligations on the behalf of the tree warden and the DPW staff, and I just would like to hear your thoughts on that, because I think we can all agree that we're supportive of the agenda. I think the concern is whether or not we can actually live up to the obligations.
Yes, supportive of the agenda. We're not sure that we have funding or bandwidth to do some of those obligations if that's how they are taken and meant by the resolution. So we'd like to explore that more fully to see what is possible or not possible and see where we can, get some positive things going, but be able to do that and not be put behind.
Thank you.
All right, so no change. Item 38, which is the fossil fuel infrastructure bylaw, to bring us up to date with the DOER request for edits.
I'm a yes.
And I'm a yes, and Ms. Hay, you were listed as a yes.
I just have a question where it defines major renovation. Is that definition consistent with any other place where we define major renovation? I mean, it says it's as defined in 225 CMR 24, but is that how we define major renovation in the rest of our, anything with the building department? I just want to make sure there's nothing out of conflict, that's not a conflict.
You probably should ask town council.
Okay.
All right, and I think that would be a helpful piece of information to have for a town meeting.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, because some of
Right.
our articles come through and they say, when you do a major renovation, or, that we're using all the same definitions.
And I wonder if actually that's a question as much for the planning department staff as town council, because they would know where in the zoning bylaw that exists already. So, Mr. Malloy, is that something we could just have Ms. Kowalski or Ms. McCabe answer for us?
We can look into that.
I do believe that town council spent a lot of time discussing this.
Right, but we'll come back to getting positions on this. But I am in favor in aligning with what the DOER is requiring of us. Number 39 is a home rule petition to adjust the number of on-premise wine and malt alcohol licenses.
I thought I was a yes on this, so I may not have marked it. So I'm a yes.
Okay.
Although I've got the voting, I'm speaking on the under 16 and up voting and the alcohol licenses. I hope those don't come back to back. A little awkward.
They're
expanding alcohol and youth, not the same agenda.
Okay. And Mr. Sandin, are you ready or you want to wait? Okay. 40 is the Integrated Pest Management Resolution, which we heard tonight.
Yes.
I'm a yes.
And I was already a yes, and Ms. Hay, you're a yes, and Mr. Sandin?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so yes across the board. 41, we'll be hearing in a couple of days, so we're all wait.
Because it was coming out of TAC and I'm the liaison, I've already heard it, so I'm a yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Pato. Mr. Pinstow wasn't here during the presentation, but the proponent was asking that the town implement integrated pest management system, and my recollection is that the town already has integrated pest management system implementation. So I just wanted to hear that from you.
Yes, all of our turf areas, we proceed with an IPM program, Integrated Pest Management Program.
And my recollection is you've been doing that for more than a decade at least.
We've been doing that since I started in 2000.
Okay. So moving on to 42, which was digital publication of legal notices, which we heard tonight.
I'm a yes.
I was already yes.
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 And we are yeses across the board. All right. 43, voting rights 16 and older.
I'm a yes.
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 We are now yeses across the board. 44 is an IP.
Yes.
Yes.
We're yeses across the board. 45 is Indigenous Peoples Day. Citizens.
I'm a yes.
Yes.
Yep, I was already a yes, and it's yes across the board.
Can I just wait? I want to be a wait.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
That's fine. Yes. 46 is the Royal Family Invitation to the 250th, which, did we hear about this from you, Susie, or Ms. Barry?
It's a Mr. Lucente, but I'm a yes.
I'm a
Mr.
yes.
Lucente's article.
I just have a question.
Yes.
Which royal family?
Of England.
Okay.
So who's staying at your house? Jill has the kids.
Susie, I think you're listed as presenting.
I am.
Is that not?
You are.
But you were the one who proposed the article, is my point. You did.
No, I did. I just didn't know if
You wanted
you're
to
listed.
present?
It's up to you.
We can rock, paper, scissors it.
We'll
Figure it out.
Yeah.
Who's presenting, but I'm a yes.
Sure. And Mr. Sandy?
Now that I know which royal family, yeah.
I'm actually staying away. I've been hearing a lot about this lately from people, and there is a cohort of our residents who are not happy about this, actually. So I think I want to hear how the town meeting conversation goes.
Right. And I was await and will remain await as well. Let's see where we go with this.
Could you elaborate on the concerns? Because to hear people are concerned without a reason is a little.
I think. So I've heard a couple of different things, and one of them is simply a concern about sort of a return to a colonial era we broke from, and why would we want to invite that back in? There are other people who just sort of said, I'm opposed to bringing in royalty. This is all about, democracy. And I'm trying to think. There were a couple of, I was sort of surprised. It seemed to me when you all initially brought it up that it's sort of a fun, we have the British ambassador and it seemed to be part and parcel, but I am respecting the fact that there are people who genuinely are uncomfortable about this for, I suspect, a variety of reasons that may go into British history. I'm not sure entirely. I haven't truly pressed, but I've sensed true discomfort. So I guess I just want to hear more from people. And I haven't had it brought to me in a context in which I could really dig in yet. So I that's why I'm saying I want to hear the conversation. Maybe that the people, where I heard and what I've heard are a very small minority, and it may not be a big deal. But the fact that I've heard it at all makes me say I want to respect the conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Hay. Moving on.
Mr. Pando, what were your concerns?
I have sort of a visceral reaction to inviting the royal family. So I'm not sure my concerns rise to what I think I'm hearing Ms. Hay report from other individuals, but it wasn't as I used before, a no-brainer in my head. So I wanted to hear the debate.
Okay.
Zoning we're going to be hearing from, so we'll skip these. And that brings us to the end, right? So Mrs. Axtell, is there anything that you want more information from the board on, or do you think you have enough to get started?
I have enough. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
And will Ms. Katzenbach send us a revised version? Thanks.
Yeah. And that brings us to the end of this item, so we'll move to item 3 on the agenda, which is an update and review of roundabout and lighting installations on the Battle Green Streetscape project. Mr. Livesey, town engineer, is going to present. We'll go through that, and then he will also address some issues raised by an abutter, and we'll have an opportunity to have the abutter talk. So even though this is a working session, I will not be taking public comment, but I will be inviting the abutter to engage with the board.
Mr. Pando.
Yes, Ms. Barry.
I'll be recused on this item as my place of employment is a direct abutter to the Battle Green Streetscape.
Right, and you have consistently recused from this project in its
have.
entirety.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Livesey, I'm not connected online, so you are there. Very good.
I am, yes.
So I'll hand this to you.
Yes, if we could get the slides up on the screen, that would be great. And just quickly, I'm John Livesey. I'm the town engineer, and I'd like to give you an update of the Battle Green project. The project started. It was in April. It began on April 18th, 2023. Just quickly, the project goals, as a reminder, were focused around pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicle safety, vehicular operational improvements, improved connectivity and accessibility throughout the Battle Green area, and enhancements to the landscape. Next slide, please. So construction began the day after Patriots Day in 2023. It began with survey and site layout, test pits in various locations. The bottom left photo shows you an example of a test pit. One thing that we noticed test pitting is there was a significant amount of utilities there in the ground, and it was very difficult to get in some of our infrastructure, particularly lighting foundations. We had to do some custom designs of lighting on site in order to get some of the foundations installed where they needed to be. We did some hydrant removal and replacement. Tree transplant was completed. The contractor hired Fody as a subcontractor. We had a very wet year. Interestingly enough, at the beginning of the transplant, we were concerned with having the tree get enough water, and over the year, our concern turned into, did the tree get too much water? So we'll see in the spring if the tree survived that wet year or not. We also began concrete sidewalk along Mass Ave, which you see in the top right corner of the screen. We saw curb ramps, concrete sidewalk, and curbing along Merriam Street as well for that bus bump in, which has been used fairly often throughout the construction season. And drainage installation, as you can see, the bottom right photo began, as well as conduit installation and light foundations. Next slide, please. From there, in June, we continued with drainage installation, conduit installation, and light foundations, which essentially, you can see the lighting up there now. The conduit essentially wraps around the whole Battle Green, and under sidewalks on the along the outer edge of Mass Ave, Bedford Street, and Harrington as well. There was we completely did the realignment at the Mass Ave and Harrington Road intersection to make it a safer, teed off intersection. That's been operating since June. Did some paving, you can see in the bottom right photo, some hydrant replacement in the top left photo, and as an example of a lighting foundation on the bottom left photo. And sidewalk and curbing work began along Harrington Road, which is seen in the top right photo. Next slide, please. Moving into July, we completed all the drainage work on Mass Ave and Harrington Road and continued further with conduit and lighting foundations. Lumen seed began along Mass Ave and Harrington Road, and that continued as we progressed throughout the construction season. We performed additional test pits and continued with concrete sidewalk. And what you can see from the top right and bottom right photos is the work on the Mass Ave Island in front of the Captain Parker statue. And then we started to install the stabilized stone dust paths along Harrington Road, which the tough piece about that was scheduling, because we needed 72 hours of no rain to install that stabilized stone dust, which typically in the summer is not a problem, but this particular summer, finding that 72-hour window was challenging. Next slide, please. August 2023, we continued with the stabilized stone dust path along Harrington Road in Mass Ave, and we began installing it along Bedford Street as well. We completed the conduit and light foundations along Mass Ave, and we continued sidewalk along Mass Ave. You can see some fresh concrete placement on the top left corner. We also completed curbing work at the Depot Square. We found some drainage that was undersized. In fact, there was a few lengths of pipe that were half the diameter of the rest of the run of pipe for the drainage system that runs over and through the ye old cemetery. So you can see that replacement on the bottom right corner. And you can also see the granite curbing work in front of the Captain Parker statue in the bottom left corner, and some light conduit work, lighting conduit work in the top right corner. Next slide, please. We then, in September, moved on to the masonry stone wall. We were able to do some of the wall with stones that were found. I think they may have been part of the wall that runs down Clark Street. So we used some stones were sourced from the site, and some stones were sourced off-site, and we were able to install that wall across the belfry. Granite curbing installation at Clark Street and Mass Ave was also done. We removed the Hancock Street Island. You can see that bottom right photo with some drainage going in, some conduit and handhole work as well in preparation for the roundabout installation. And we completed the brickwork at the depot. That was to provide a little bit more room for the buses to drive into the depot and loop around onto Merriam so they could park along Merriam Street. So all of that work to allow buses to make that turn is complete, and they have been using it. We also installed some wooden benches and began concrete work in front of the Masons, concrete sidewalk work. Then moving into October, we completed the sidewalk at the Masons. We also completed paving along Mass Ave and Harrington Road. We installed pavers at the nose of the Battle Green as well as the island. We will be adding some pavers in front of the Captain Parker statue. From looking at it, it seems like the pavers didn't go far enough to give it the right aesthetic and solid platform for pedestrians. So that'll be added in the spring. We completed phase 1 of the roundabout construction and began phase 2 of the roundabout construction. You can see in the bottom left image the rebar going into the roundabout for reinforcement for the truck apron. It's actually a very complicated rebar plan because it's radial. Typically, rebar is installed in a grid pattern, but since this is a radial type system, it got rather challenging and complicated with the rebar and the bending of the rebar. But that was successfully completed. We also began work on splitter islands. You can see one of the splitter islands in the bottom right corner photo, as well as a big pile of rebar. And granite step installation began at the Belfry. And we also started installing the Type A pedestrian lights. The Type A pedestrian lights are the shorter lights, 12 feet 6 inches in height. So installation began on those. In November, which is nearing the end of our construction season, we stopped road work and physical road work in mid-November. We were able to complete phase 2 of the roundabout construction, which is seen in the top right photo. We also completed the concrete sidewalk at the Belfry, as well as the steps. You can see that in the bottom left photo. That it's now fully accessible to get people from the roadway safely across the roadway and up to the entry to that Belfry Park. Pavement markings were completed on all the areas that had final surfacing. We also put temporary markings on the areas that have not yet been final paved, and you can see a piece of that in the bottom left photo along Harrington Road. And we continued with the Type A lighting installation and wiring and began signage. And you can see the Type A lighting in the top left photo, and the bottom right photo shows you one of the islands that has cobblestone as the paving material. Next slide, please. So in the final month of work, this when we were doing off-road work, we got the Type B lights, which had been ordered in April. Finally came in, and those are all installed. So you can see a photo on the top right and the bottom right showing you the both the Type A's and the Type B lights at night. And I think the one in the top right photo was taken last week, and the bottom right was taken probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago. We installed the handrail at the Belfry for the stairs and the bus shelter, which was not originally part of this job, but we added it in with a separate funding source, and was installed. That was completed, and sign installation was completed as well. There is now that brings us to 2024 construction. I'd say we have just a few notes of feedback we've received. We've received a lot of positive feedback. I've actually seen some things in the town I live in on social media, people talking about the roundabout in Lexington and recommending that they install them in our town because they're happy with how well it works. So it was kind of nice to see that, and we've gotten a lot of people have reached out to us with positive feedback, happy with how it flows, and they feel it's much safer and calmer for traffic. We have received a little bit of feedback from people that have requested additional signage. We haven't installed additional signage. We're hoping that over time people will just get more used to it. And we have had a few requests for additional lighting, although we did go out there with our lighting engineer and did some photometrics. Objectively, it seems like the photometrics come pretty close to matching the design plan. We have a few areas that are slightly underlit, a few areas that are slightly overlit, but subjectively, it seems like the lighting is appropriate out there right now. We may make a few tweaks in a few locations, but nothing, we don't anticipate any significant changes. And what we expect in the 2024 construction season is the final paving and pavement markings, which includes the majority of the paving is along Bedford Street. There's a little bit along Hancock Street and also some paving on Merriam Street. Final grading, some of the edges of the sidewalk, we need to cut back the slopes a little bit more and get a more gentle slope for easier maintenance. Loom and seed those to get proper growth. And then there's landscaping plan for several of the islands. The island that's in front of the Captain Parker statue, a couple of the splitter islands, as well as the center island at the roundabout. That landscaping will also help provide some contrast, which will help drivers see those islands a little bit better and provide a nice aesthetic as well. Just wanted to follow up with some concerns we got from a direct abutter at number 9 Hancock. One concern was specifically at the crosswalk between the Masonic Temple and the fence at number 9 Hancock. That's one of the 4 legs, if you will, of the roundabout for crossings. It's the one to the north as you head toward the bikeway crossing. And the request was to remove the crosswalk and continue the curbing at the existing crosswalk location. If you were to remove the crosswalk, then the curbing would continue in order to close that off. And so for that, those are essentially one concern. We don't recommend the removal of the crosswalk. We think that provides good connectivity for the pedestrians as well as for the bikes that don't feel comfortable going through the roundabout. This was something that we had talked about it with both the bike committee and the Commission on Disabilities. And I have seen a fair amount of users actually on that crosswalk as I've been out there overseeing the construction as well as driving through the roundabout. So, and then the other 2 concerns, which I think kind of pair together also, is using pavers in the island. No landscaping. We do have some pavers covering some of the islands are fully covered in pavers, the smaller ones, and others have partial paving, but they intend on getting landscaping. And because of that, we also installed a water spigot so that they can easily be watered to help them, help with sustainability of those plants. So we all, as I had previously mentioned, the landscaping also provides sort of a visual break, so you see that color, you see that change, and helps people realize that there's islands there, particularly with the limited signage that we have out there. So we do not recommend eliminating the landscaping in the islands, and if we're not to eliminate the landscaping, then we certainly wouldn't want to eliminate the spigot because we want the landscaping to be maintained. Next slide, please. There's also a suggestion on lighting near number 9 Hancock and moving a light back to its original location, as well as moving the light at the crosswalk on the Battle Green. So the lighting out there now, as I mentioned, when we did the photometrics, seems appropriate. We have had concerns that there isn't enough lighting, although I don't agree with those concerns. I think the lighting is a good amount right now, but we do have some people that feel like we should actually add some lighting. So we are concerned with moving it because they are sited in a way that it provides safety to the roundabout. They were specifically cited in those locations for that. Additionally, moving the foundations in this area is extremely difficult with the other underground utilities, so we wouldn't necessarily be able to move it to another location without having things in the way that wouldn't allow us to put the foundation in. So at this time, we're not recommending movement of the lighting, although, as I mentioned, we may make some adjustments to the lighting levels. Next slide, please. Finally, the fence at number 9 Hancock. Prior to the driveway at number 9 Hancock, in order to be able to get into the roundabout in a location where it could enter the roundabout and go right, or into the roundabout and go around and go left, needed to be moved. I don't have the exact distance it was moved, but I want to say it was moved approximately 15 to 20 feet. So prior to that, the fence basically met the edge of the driveway. Now that we've moved the driveway, the fence is probably about 15 to 20 feet short of reaching the driveway. There's a request to extend the driveway. I apologize. To extend the fence so it once again meets the new location of the driveway. We understand this desire. It would give it a similar aesthetic that it had before. And if the board would like and want to direct us to, and yet homeowner is able to obtain HTC approval, we have no opposition to extending the fence and also ensuring that the existing stain or paint on the extended fence, the new piece of fence, and the existing piece of fence are all painted to match. And with that, I have nothing further on the presentation and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Lucy. So colleagues, we have Mr. and Ms. McKenna here who are the direct abutters and would like to speak to us. Before we bring them forward, I'm going to ask you to come sit at the table next to Ms. Katzenbach. I'm going to ask the board if you have any questions on the status report portion of this presentation by Mr. Livesey. Mr. Sandin.
I just want to thank you for this incredibly detailed report and for the work in getting the Rotary in place and all the other work that you've done. One question I have about it says status 2024 construction final paving. And as I drive around the Rotary right now, there's a little bit of two sort of levels as you drive around the Rotary. And I'm wondering whether that's intended to be the way it is at the end or whether we're going to be paving flat and level all around the Rotary.
Great question. And I want to make sure I understand your question correctly. When you mention the two levels, are they the levels that are in asphalt?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes, the level that comes out approximately a foot or two off of the granite curbing.
Yes.
And the reason it does that is ultimately it's all going to be paved and it's going to be one level. That asphalt is temporary, and that was installed because there's an 1.5 inch lip on the face of that granite that the new asphalt will go right to that face. And we didn't want to leave the face of that granite exposed over the winter because we didn't want it to be damaged by plows or cars. So we put a temporary asphalt patch around any area that was vulnerable so that if a plow came up, it would ride up on the patch and not hit the side of the granite and break it.
Well, thank you. That's reassuring. And I like the idea that you're protecting our Rotary already.
Yeah, it doesn't look pretty right now, but it will be one level of asphalt.
I'm sorry, Mr. Livesey, for saying the word Rotary. I apologize for that profusely. Roundabout. That brings me to my next question, which is a resident who's moved here from another country said, when I mentioned the roundabout, she said, "Oh, you mean the calming circle?" And I was wondering if you had any sort of feedback on one of the objectives for the roundabout was that you were hoping that it would calm traffic a little bit. I'm wondering if you have any feedback on that so far, or whether it's too early to tell.
From what we've observed, we haven't taken any data on it, but from what we observed, it has absolutely slowed traffic. We also just spoke with the police chief to ask about accident data, and that's gone down significantly. I think the data count was only one accident there since we installed it, and that includes a period of a learning curve as well in that time. So that's so it seems to be working very effectively so far. But with that said, it's still early. We'd like to get the project finished, do some more observations. We'll probably do some speed counts and things like that. But our initial observations, as well as our initial feedback, is very, very positive.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So thank you. And I will say that I have heard a lot of very positive feedback in general about the installation, in particular that people do feel that it is much safer. I do have a few questions of my own on this, and one of them, I think I've mentioned this to Mr. Malloy before, but the bike ramp sort of ons and offs that are in addition to crosswalks, I find very worrisome. The way that they are designed, they have the same tactile pads that we put into the actual crosswalk entrances and exits. And my concern is that for someone who has any visual impairment, if they encounter that tactile pad, they are potentially led to believe that that is where the crosswalk is, and yet it is putting them directly into traffic. If in fact, so I mean, personally, I think there are also just sort of extra interruptions in the flow of everything, and I'm not sure I am fully on board with their necessity. I understand they were approved in the plan and the bike committee did want them, but at a minimum, can we, since it's for bicycles and not for pedestrians, can we replace that with just concrete and get rid of those tactile pads? I'm terrified that it's going to lead somebody into traffic.
So because there's a ramp that does go down into traffic, we need to put the tactile pad, because somebody could be walking down that into traffic, someone that has visual impairment, and not know they're going into traffic if there isn't that detectable pad there.
But how is that different? If you take the visually impaired person who is, sorry, you have a visually impaired person who is looking to safely cross. They are looking for the indication of where a crosswalk is, and there is no distinction between the crosswalk entrance and this ramp into traffic.
No, I understand what you're saying. However, they could, if you can picture someone walking down the sidewalk, they could easily meander onto that bike ramp, correct? And if they do that, and they don't have a detectable warning pad telling them that they're approaching a roadway, they won't know that they're entering a roadway, and they can walk. Although it's not going to a crosswalk, it's notifying them that they're entering a roadway. And without that, they would enter a roadway with no notification that there was a roadway pending.
Mr. Lipsey, I just want to ask a question on this topic. I'll come right back to Ms. Hay.
Follow up to it.
So I took a look at the MUTC, the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, for roundabout designs with the bike offline. And they seem to require this. Is that the case?
Yes.
All right. So this is adhering to design standards for roundabout implementations. And for people who are visually impaired, do they typically have some degree of training when it comes to interacting with traffic systems?
They may have training. Some of them have training. Some of them have, got training when they were in school. For example, my sister-in-law is legally blind, and she went to Perkins and Perkins School for the Blind, and they do have training sessions there. But there are other people, including people that become blind midlife, later in life, that don't have any training, and they may seek training, may not. So not all blind, visually impaired people necessarily are trained.
And the last follow-up question on this is, in your discussions with the Commission on Disabilities, did you pursue this question and point?
Good question. Honestly, I can't remember specifically what the discussions were on the bike ramps and the detectable warning panels. So
that's exactly where I was going. That's it. That was going to be my next point. Mr. I would appreciate if we could, in fact, ask the Commission on Disabilities to come out and take a look at this. It really does make me uncomfortable. I think it's concerning. I hear you, Mr. Pata, that this is necessary, because I was going to ask if we could also have the bicycle people come back out and determine whether we think this is necessary or whether there is a way to avoid this extra cut. But if it is mandatory, I'd at least like to make sure that we do everything possible to make sure it is safe for every user, because it makes me nervous. Thank you. The other question I had for you was under the, I think it was the first of the abutter concerns that you list, and I know that there were several others that were raised to us that aren't included in this, but the first one with the crosswalk, I believe that the issue wasn't so much, at least my recollection of it was that it wasn't removing the crosswalk so much as moving the crosswalk. I thought it was that the request was to move the crosswalk so that it lined up with the crushed stone path, or, you know, that goes very close by, that heads to the visitor center. And I'm just wondering, and I know there's also a crosswalk just a little further up at the bike path. So I'm just wondering if we can be efficient in some way in sort of figuring out where we want people to be directed as pedestrians into one of these two paths, either the bike path or the path to the visitor center, and whether or not, what's the distance we're talking about to move this particular crosswalk to line up to where the visitor center path is.
And just to clarify, I think these were two different crosswalk discussions. One was to line up and the other one was this one at 9 Hancock. And the abutters are shaking their heads yes on that.
Yeah, this one, the one that's written here was not related to the visitor center. It was specifically the crosswalk.
So Mr. Livesey, you're too far from your mic.
Oh, sorry. The one that's listed here was specifically the crosswalk between the Masonic Temple and number 9. It wasn't, this particular one was not related to the visitor center, the one that I have up on the slide.
Okay, it just, but my point still stands. I feel like we have an awful lot of different paths and points and crosswalks, and I guess I'm just trying to figure out whether, you know, we're trying to be tourist friendly as well as resident friendly. And I would love to see us, A, not have an excessive number of crossing points, and B, have the crossing points be in the most useful places. So, you know, the slides that we have tonight kind of cut off just south of where some of this goes on. So I assume that the crosswalk, and Kim, if you can go back to the slide, I think it's, yeah, there. We're talking about that crosswalk that's at the top of the top drawing, correct?
Excuse me, correct.
Okay. And then am I not correct that there's a path just, if you were to continue on the right-hand side of that curve at the top, Kim, yeah, you continue along that sidewalk, that's where the path cuts through, and then you get a little further and that's where the bike path is. So that's sort of my point, that I feel like we've got a lot going on there. I don't know, and I guess I'm just looking to see if we can consolidate any of that. So it seemed like a reasonable question, but maybe I'm in the wrong direction.
So the bike path is up?
Yeah.
Right.
The bike path
is a fair
is
amount
up. Yeah, the bike path is up above that that crosswalk that you saw at the top of the screen. It's also in the colored photo. You know, that crosswalk was something that was discussed with the Commission on Disabilities and was discussed with the bike committee as well. And for you know, if it were to be removed, then it is definitely limiting the connectivity and making it more difficult, especially for users with mobility impairment to make that crossing.
Yeah, again, I wasn't looking to have it removed. I was actually having it moved just a little north or northeast to line up.
Yeah.
But anyway, it sounds like I'm
Yeah.
tilting at windmills, maybe.
Yeah, it would have to either, if we were going to do anything, it would have to be, it can't really just be slightly moved without significant construction work. all the curbing is in. The island, the pavers in the island are in. The truck apron is in front of the masons. So you'd have to remove a lot of sidewalk and replace a lot of sidewalk in order to make any movements, and it still has to be in that island, so you could only move it like a few inches.
Mr. Vicente?
So thank you, Mr. Livesey and Mr. Pinson. I know there's been a lot of meetings over I don't even want to say how many months, but months, years to get through this project. And there's a lot of pluses. I think a lot of things came out really nice. And we have heard lots of positive feedback about traffic flow through the area. So there's a lot of pluses here. A couple of the concerns I've had or heard, and before I get to my concerns, I actually want to ask a question about something you said, Mr. Livesey, which was, you mentioned additional pavers in front of the statue. I want to make sure I heard that correctly, and I wasn't quite sure what you meant, if I even heard that correctly.
So in front of the Captain Parker statue, I don't know, can it be zoomed in on the bottom left photo, the colored photo? See if you can look at the nose in front of the Captain Parker on, sort of the right side of the photo. You'll see the gray area, which is the pavers, and then the brown area, which is, it's actually a gray stone dust that just using to help create that visual. And those pavers, they feel lost. They feel like they just stopped short of the statue, and extending those by a couple, I think the pavers are like 2 foot by 2 foot squares. By putting another row and a half of those squares in, it would bring it to match up with the stone that wraps around the front of that circle. So it just provides a better look, and also just a more solid ground area there. So it's not a lot of additional pavers. We just feel it will kind of clean that up, finish it up a little bit better. What was on the drawing and what it physically looks like in the field, the aesthetic didn't match what we had hoped.
Okay. I appreciate that. I actually did, believe it or not, Ms. Barry and I did a tour with the staff at the Visitors Center, because the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism had come to town to do a tour of Lexington to learn more about it. So during that tour, I did notice that it is a little awkward there, but I would also hope that we were in discussions with the tourism committee, or at a minimum, the tour guides, to understand their use and where they're standing and what might be most appropriate for their needs. So hopefully that outreach can happen before we do anything different. I want to move down the street a little on that slide while you have it up. If we could talk about the Bedford Street side of the Battle Green. So one of the things that's concerned me a lot is the grass strip that did not get put in along the sidewalk. So we have grass strip everywhere else around the green except that strip there. And I'm not quite sure what happened, because I thought, and maybe I misunderstood what happened at our meeting, but I thought we discussed this and came to a conclusion that the grass strip would, although it's hard to maintain, it would aesthetically improve that area and keep the consistency around the green.
So, I'm sorry, did you direct that to me, Joe?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you want to take this, or do you want me to recap where we were?
If you want to recap, you can do that, and I can follow up if any follow-ups needed.
Right. So at the select board meeting, when we discussed this issue, we were deadlocked 2-2 on what to do there. And the final comment that was expressed from the board was to take a look at the Battle Green master plan to see what what prescriptions existed there. And the Battle Green Master Plan doesn't speak directly to the grass there. Mr. Lipsey, is there more to it?
No, that's it. I went through that plan several times after that meeting to try to find something that was clear and distinct regarding that, and I could not find anything that was clear and distinct on that. It was very vague, and things could be interpreted in multiple ways. From my readings.
All right. I think it's a mistake. I think, again, it's inconsistent with the rest of the other two sides of the green. And I think it just makes it look, it takes away from the aesthetic and in my opinion, and especially where you have the similar situation on the other side of the street where it's, right from pavement, right to the concrete sidewalk. I think it just makes it look less aesthetically pleasing. But if I guess it was a 2-2, maybe that's all I heard was, I think Mr. Sandine and I were both in agreement on that one at the time. So
that's accurate.
Still in agreement.
It's good. Guess it doesn't get us very far. So then I would like to move back to the roundabout area. So one of my concerns with the roundabout that folks have talked about, I have noticed that I drive through there almost daily. It's very bright, and it's almost there's some pluses to the brightness, but I think it's also some negatives to the brightness. It almost looks like it's a movie set, and it's like on fire brightness. And I thought with these light fixtures, there would be some ways to dim or to take some of the sort of curse off of the extra brightness. And I know the McKennas are here, but just even looking at their house, it looks like their house is lit up constantly. I haven't spoken about this with them directly. It's just my own observations. It seems like if there's anything we could do to sort of calm those lights down from the spillage, I just feel like it's too bright. And at the same time, it's so bright. It's also ironic because it's really hard to see the roundabout still, especially at night. And perhaps that's the pavement markings aren't in place yet, or the final paving isn't done. But it's really tough to tell that you're coming into this roundabout, even with the lights on. So bright. So I hope there's a resolution to this part of it. And I hope it, and I know Mr. Patter, we're going to hear from the McKennas at some point, but tonight, but I'll leave my comments there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this portion? Right, and then just to confirm, Mr. Lipsey, there is an intent to do some landscaping on the island of the roundabout. Right, at this point, it's not there. And I agree with Mr. Lucente that given missing the vertical elements, low though they will be, but vertical, it's a little easier to miss that there's a roundabout there if you're not used to the diversions. But I would like to see how this evolves with the final implementation.
Yes, and if you want, I can just add a little bit to that lighting comment if you'd like.
Please do.
It's up to you. So the lighting itself just got fully operational approximately, I'd say approximately 2 weeks ago. There was some software updates that needed to be made. It's a very complicated system, but it's now fully operational. And then following that, we had the photometrics done. We would like to do some dimming of the lights to see how it works. But we need to physically be out there when we do the dimming at night, just to make sure. I don't, if we put an arbitrary number in there from my laptop at home and dim the lights and it's too dark and we have accidents, that's certainly not a safe thing to do. So we need to be very careful about when and how we do it. So if it needs to be changed back quickly, we can make that happen. So that's something that we'll be coordinating. The limited signage certainly limits how much we can dim the lights, because without the signage, people don't have much to go by with those lights. But we're trying to be very cautious about over signing this area. But that it creates that balance. If we have we have significantly less signs than the MUTCD would recommend. And we're doing that because of the area that it's in, and trying to be respectful of the area that it's in. But that also results in not wanting to underlight the area and have people not be able to see it and know what to do. So it's kind of a balancing act. But we fully recognize your concern, and it is something that we're working through. But I don't have a full answer on it yet, other than that we're going to be looking to do some dimming. We just need to try to find that appropriate level without making it a dangerous intersection.
Mr. Lucente?
So thank you, Mr. Livesey, for that answer. But I thought when we purchased these lights, and the specific benefit of doing these lights was they could also be blocked off on a specific side with a mirror or something else that would not shine it out in a particular order. Have we done any of that for these light fixtures that are in place now? Dimming is one thing, but the blocking I thought was another option. Am I mistaken with?
We have not done any blocking. I don't remember that specifically, but it certainly could be. I know we have the blocking on the top of the lights, so we don't have the light pollution into the sky. So it's very possible that we could block. I'm guessing you're talking about maybe the rear of the light, and that's absolutely something we can look at.
Yeah, I think that would at least go some ways toward helping it look like a movie studio over there at night. Thank you.
Mr. Sandin?
So appreciate that Mr. Livesey mentioning that they're dark sky compliant. One of the things that also helps with lighting and residence is the temperature of the lights, the color of the lights. Where did we come out? Did we 2,700, 3,000 Kelvin? Do you have that? You said you just did your photometric. Would you know that information?
I have that information. I don't know. In my head, I want to say 2,700, but you may have just put that in my head. So, but I can.
Sorry for leading the witness.
yeah, exactly. But I have that information. I just don't have it in my head right now. But I can certainly get you that information.
Well, if it's that direction, then it's the right color to be less disruptive to people's sleep. So I do appreciate that we're trying to do that.
All right. So I think we've concluded this portion. And I'd like to invite the McKennas to come forward to sit at the table and allow us to discuss some of the issues they've raised.
Steve McKenna, 9 Hancock Street. I think most of you know that I don't appreciate the opportunity to get to come and speak to selectmen meetings, nor attend selectmen meetings, but I thank you for listening. I'd also like to start by expressing my gratitude to the staff members who have been listening throughout the course of this project, have heard some of our concerns, addressed on some level those concerns, some of those concerns tonight. I'd also like to thank the selectmen who individually took time to come out and look at the site and hear the specific concerns that my wife raised. I think that level of commitment and engagement is certainly important for elected officials. All that said, I continue to find the Rotary, and yes, I'll continue to call it a Rotary because that's what it is, objectionable. The Rotary is loud. There is beeping that goes on at that Rotary multiple times an hour throughout the day and into the night. The Rotary is bright at night. The lighting there is like a movie set, and it just puts our whole property on display for the whole community. The Rotary is faster traffic-wise than the streets used to be. Trying to get out of my driveway, which had to be relocated for this project, is always a challenge every day that I leave my driveway because of the way people come from Mass Ave to Bedford Street to the Bedford portion, towards the Bedford portion of town. They zip through there at fast rates throughout the day. The overall look of the Rotary feels very urban to me. It feels like you have taken the historic New England Battle Green Common and put it in the middle of an urban setting that is not at all in keeping with the character of this town. The crosswalk that was discussed this evening that is directly in front of the fence at my house is redundant. There is a crosswalk a few steps down the road towards the center of the town going to the visitor center, though it doesn't line up with the path where the visitor center is. There is another crosswalk that currently exists already before all this project of the Rotary behind my house, connecting correctly to the bike path. The notion that you needed another crosswalk smack dab in the middle, 3 crosswalks to get people safely across the road is redundant. That crosswalk in front of the fence at my house causes a dip in the sidewalk that people are not used to. That sidewalk in the snow, come out and check it tomorrow, causes a slipping factor that has not been properly addressed during the winter. Town does not know how to plow that crosswalk because the sidewalk plow can't access the turn with the fence there. It plows into the fence. It doesn't plow at all. It can't fit through the opening. And the crosswalk is redundant. I don't care about the fact that it's the north side and it needs another crosswalk on the Rotary. There's 3 crosswalks there now, redundant. Both my parents are in their 90s, and to get them to my house and to have them safely access my house with the current setup of the Rotary is very challenging. It's hard for them to be able to park near the front door, get out of the car with a walker, move into the house. So it's not conducive to that. As you know, we do have a lease with the town that grants us certain rights. The town chose to purchase the property to preserve the context of this National Historic Register in which our house sits. When they no longer wanted to maintain the buildings, the town sought to preserve those rights through an extensive preservation agreement and land lease, both of which are on file with the Registry of Deeds. We continue to maintain our focus on that contract that we have with the town. We feel that the town has not led up to their end of the contract, and we are concerned about this. Although I'm not convinced that anything I say or my wife says tonight will actually make a difference, I hope our comments will be taken seriously, and that if you can find some changes to mitigate these concerns, you will do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKenna. Ms. McKenna?
Yes, and I apologize because this is such an upsetting and emotional thing that we've been through as the result of the actions the board took. I had to write most of my comments, so I hope you'll indulge me so that I can get through it. This has been the most stressful thing that I've ever encountered working with the town. And I can honestly say that when we bought this house, we thought, wow, Stephen and I got engaged on the Battle Green. We always wanted to have 2 kids, live on the Battle Green, and we do. This has become a nightmare for us. And I'm going to outline some of those things that have happened. And I went to John Livesey, and I've always had a wonderful relationship and a lot of respect for John and for Dave and the work that they do for this town. And I still do. And 2 out of the 3 intersections here have been done very well. This one has not. And I totally disagree, having watched it, with the notion that it works. It works depending on how you want to define it. So since you have each visited the site and given us your time, I'm going to try to stay as focused as I can be and not say things that you don't know. But I will say that there is a huge difference between living the stress day to day and viewing it initially. And then as I speak, I'm going to ask you to review the question in your mind. Why did we separate the Battle Green streetscape from the center streetscape if we were not going to make the accommodations necessary to preserve this historic area and instead essentially treat them the same as the rest of the streetscape? It literally looks now like the streetscape is one from our house all the way down to this end of Mass Ave, and that was never the intent. So for the public who may be listening and wondering why we are complaining about this, we have 3 sections in our lease, which I know I pointed out to you. I want to point them out publicly. One is that each party agrees to maintain the areas in a neat and orderly manner in recognition of the public and private purposes for which the respective areas of Buckman Park are and shall be held and used hereunder. We don't feel that you're doing that. Section 12.2 guarantees a right of quiet enjoyment, and it reads, the tenant shall lawfully, peaceably, and quietly have, hold, occupy, and enjoy the leased premises during the term hereunder without hindrance or ejection by landlord. That's not occurring. And all of the changes at this intersection, and just this one alone, have negatively impacted our right to quiet enjoyment. And you need to hear that and understand that. The Secretary of the Interior standards for treatment of historic properties with guidelines for preserving, rehabilitating, restoring, and reconstructing historic buildings as revised by Anne E. Grimer in 2017 states that the following is not recommended. Altering the relationship between the building and landscape features in the setting by widening existing streets, changing landscape materials, or locating new streets or parking areas where they may negatively impact the historic character of the setting. Removing or relocating historic buildings or landscape features, thereby destroying the historic relationship between buildings and the landscape in the setting. And that is what you did when you removed the island in front of us. And I will also note that in our lease, we have a requirement to preserve every rock that we dig up without permission from the HDC to remove it from the property. That did not happen here. They removed the big rock that was at the head of that island. Nobody knows what happened to it. So here are some of the conditions that we have observed, which demonstrate the wisdom of the statement that I just read to you. One of the most sensitive items for the Battle Green Master Plan was the lighting, as you've all discussed tonight. Past designs that we paid to do the Battle Green Master Plan recommended that careful selection of a dark sky friendly feature with a full cutoff light source would enhance the nighttime experience of the Battle Green and would not compete with the special lighting dedicated to illuminating the Minuteman statue and the flagpole. What we selected completely ignores that. 46 lights in the Battle Green Master Plan area, not the center streetscape, just in this triangle, Now replace the original 13 lights. There are too many lights there. I don't care what standards you use. There was no reason for 3.5 times the number of lights that used to be there when you're trying to preserve the night sky. For me personally, one of the things that I revered most was going to bed. And while I was lying in bed, I'd look out the window and I could see the flagpole. And I could see the flag, and I would reflect about what that meant. Because as an American history and American government major, that was important to me. Now I see nothing but multiple lights. And what you were talking about in terms of fixing it isn't going to change the fact that now when I look out my window, and you can see it in one of the pictures that John provided tonight, all I see is light fixtures. I can't even appreciate the flagpole because I have so much visual interruption before I even get to seeing the flagpole lit up at night, which for people's education is lit up 24 hours by order of Congress. I believe we were the 8th one that was granted that right because that's how important the battle green was to the country. Hopefully with modifications as I'm requesting, we can make those changes. Now I want to tell you about the noise impact that my husband alluded to. In addition to some of the things he noted, the trucks and large vehicles bang down as they go over that apron. So every time somebody goes over that apron, we know because we hear this loud bang to the point that I often jump out of my seat because I don't know what's coming. That is not quiet enjoyment. The horns are blaring, as was mentioned. I've actually kept a log since the beginning of January on it. They are so intrusive. You can tell from my log when we were not home because there's a blank space in terms of when those horns are blasting. I can tell you they happen multiple times per day. I've recorded times from 7:34 in the morning to 10:42 at night. Sometimes 1 to 5 times on the same horn as they're going through the rotary. They sit on their horn for extended periods of time. They beep at the waste disposal contractor who's just coming to pick up my trash. Just today, as of 5:30, it was up to 26 times. And there were another 4 or 5 times that I didn't have time to record before I came down here. Now I want to talk about traffic and safety. There are too many entrances for the sake of Mr. Livesey and my respect for him, I'll call it a roundabout. There are 8 vehicle entry and exits, plus the multiple pedestrian and bicycle entries that you're talking about, plus our driveway. That is a lot of things in a very small period of time for anybody to try and navigate, whether they're familiar with the intersection or not. The snowplow, when they came around the intersection, blocked multiple entrances. My daughter happened to get caught in it, so she took a picture of her car blocked in that. In addition to myself, which has happened multiple times, there are others who have nearly fallen in that dip at that crosswalk that we're asking to be removed. And as you know, with my personal physical problems, we talk about making it accessible for everyone. How about making it accessible for me? One of the things we liked about that house was the fact that we could exit our front door, walk along the sidewalk, and get to our driveway. You've now extended that driveway, so it's much longer than it used to be for us to get to, making it more difficult to bring things into the house and making it more difficult for me, especially at night, to walk. And at the very least, I hope you will have the respect to say, you know what? The one person who uses that multiple times a day, it's not safe for. And my husband talked to you about his in-laws who we could not put out on the road easily to be able to get in the front door. When I used to take care of my mother and my father, I used to drive up to that light pole that was there, allow them to exit safely, get right into the house. We can't do that anymore. It's not safe. Here are a few of the observed conditions that I've observed. The traffic backups still occur. Instead of coming from Hancock Street, they now run on both ends of Bedford Street. I have never seen so much traffic on Bedford Street on both ends all day long. The cars approach the rotary and immediately try to speed through it. They don't slow down, especially when they're coming from the center and along Bedford Street from Stop and Shop. They come right into it. It is now difficult and unsafe for us to come in and out of our driveway. And I've seen more accidents than the one that was referred, and I'm going to tell you specifically. On 12/29, there was a drunk driver who drove around the rotary, went up on the battle green and around on the other side, came back across our leased land, and then back into the rotary. I've seen a car drive through from the center all the way across Bedford Street, down the other end, go right up over the existing rotary. I know of a driver who, unlike what was reported here, that we've heard nothing but good comments, I can tell you with people who don't even know me, but know that I'm active in politics, they don't know that I live there, they tell me all the time how horrible it is. I was just talking with somebody this morning who I never met before. We were in a different town and I was introduced to her, and she went on and on about how her husband will no longer navigate that intersection because it's so difficult to navigate. But the driver that I was going to tell you about would have been seriously hurt because there was a big truck speeding around there. Had that truck not seen her at the last moment and hit her, she was in her car. On January 30th, the driver banged all the way around the sides of the rotary, and somehow they ended up catching him at the Gulf Station. I saw a police car come riding through. I don't know if they pulled him over. And I only saw and heard the end of it. And I'm not sure if they hit another car, but those things are happening. And by the way, in terms of the bicycle thing, I've seen bicycles riding in the roundabout. I have not seen bicycles being directed elsewhere. But the other observed condition is that I shouldn't say I have not seen them. I have seen them much more limited. But we're directing people onto the battle green to ride their bike on the battle green, which is prohibited. We're directing people to ride on the sidewalk on our side of the street, which is also prohibited. So why that makes sense, I don't know. I just have a couple of more items and then I'll be finished, and I appreciate your indulgence. So one of the action items, and I've given you a list of them, but one of the action items that's very important is no one ever contacted us about our lease. There need to be lease modifications because the language of the lease defines responsibilities based on the location of the driveway. You've changed that. It wasn't something we wanted, but our choice was change it, or you will have to go right and go down Hancock Street every time you want to go to the center. And as you know, I spend way too much time coming to this end to come to meetings here and other things. The one thing I kind of took offense to was related to the HTC and how it's our responsibility to do it. It's actually the town's responsibility. They did all kinds of work on our property without getting HTC approval. And they've made landscaping changes, which unlike any other house in the town, we are responsible to go to them for landscaping changes. That is a requirement of our lease. And so, we're not really sure whether we want a new fence there, but I've watched too many people coming in and out of our section of the driveway thinking that that's part of the same thing because it all looks alike now. So there's nothing that's distinguishing it. So, in light of what we have described, I guess when and how will the determination be made for the changes needed? I was at Java with Jim, and he was asked a question by somebody else as to when we would know whether that rotary is working. And I have to tell you, that was a very upsetting question to me because the answer was in about a year. So this board has put us in a situation where now for about a year and a half between construction and now, going to have to live with these changes that we have been saying for a long time would not be appropriate. But honestly, as somebody who is actively engaged in the process, I had no clue it was going to be this bad. I really didn't. And so I understand that it will take some time to do that, but I hope the criteria will be appropriate when we have that discussion. The other thing that I just want to say is that the recommendation from staff to make no changes is not surprising. However, it doesn't mean that it's the right thing for the town or that it's the right thing for this National Historic Landmark or for us, your leaseholders. And as I said in my email, it was impossible for any of us to understand the dramatic impacts the work would have on the Battle Green Master Plan area. It was never anticipated that the Battle Green Streetscape work would change the Battle Green Master Plan work that had already been completed or in progress. Nor could it be expected that decisions made since the public hearings or in the field would result in the changes that are inconsistent with the Battle Green Master Plan and are unacceptable. And particularly, I want to answer that question about the grass strip, and thank you, Doug, for raising that. And there's nothing inconsistent about it. On page 61 in the Battle Green Master Plan, it is very, very clear. And I will read it to you because it was in your email. What it says is the Battle Green Master Plan explicitly envisioned returning extraneous grass areas to grass, which will greatly improve the appearance. It goes on to say paths should only be located in areas where they are most needed and eliminated from areas where they are not useful. Instead, we now have signs and poles that sit in the middle of a pathway, which is a walking hazard. And the one other thing, I've been saying for months that what got put down was stone dust, and I was told no. What was asked for was not to have stone dust on any of those paths, because in the Battle Green Master Plan from 2014, I believe, we had envisioned that that was something that tracked into all the houses. And John confirmed today that that's what they put down. So as far as around the Battle Green, I'm the one who suggested that they improve the look. Right now, it looks like all pavement in front of the Minuteman statue, and it shouldn't. So there was a discussion about adding some grass and making a straighter path. So I'm glad to hear that they're taking that recommendation. And I know I'm not supposed to sit here and talk about the Battle Green Master Plan work itself, but I will just read you one statement and leave it at that, because I don't know how you're going to resolve those issues, which are separate from my personal interests. But I'm not just an ordinary person when it comes to the Battle Green Master Plan. I gave up thousands of hours to work on that and other issues for this town. Ask my kids. They can tell you. Ask my husband, who doesn't like to come to these meetings, as you know. But some of the work does not meet the goals of the approved master plan. And why we go to all the trouble of approving a master plan and then having things changed in sight, I will never understand. While I understand that needs evolve, there are some changes that must be reconsidered, particularly changing the landscaping and placing lights and electric boxes in a way that does not allow for an unobstructed view of our historic, that does allow for an unobstructed view of our historic assets. And we don't want anything that's disturbing the night sky, because that is wrong on every level. Expanding the width of the sidewalks and removing grass when the goal was to reduce the size of the sidewalks and add more grass. Using the stone dust that tracks into the historic buildings. I already mentioned, so I won't read that right now. Building the wall at the base of the belfry that matches Cary Library is totally not what was supposed to happen. It should have been the same coloring as the Minuteman statue. That's why we separated the master plan for the center streetscape and the Battle Green. And then adding plantings to the roundabout will detract from the Battle Green itself, and it was never the intent. And DPW originally expressed concerns about the ability to maintain them. And so while we do need to put something in there, I have some very distinct ideas about what can go there that won't cause either a problem for DPW or be grass that competes with the battle green, which shouldn't be there. And so I ask you that you make the changes to preserve the battle green master plan and approve the recommended changes as detailed in my email. We need to take the time to do this right, and I thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. McKenna. Colleagues, do you have any questions for the McKennas? Mr. Lucente.
Thank you. I know this is hard, and Steve, thank you for coming. I know this isn't your favorite venue. If there's a lot in the request memo, and a lot, you brought up a lot of items tonight. Is there a top three? I know they're all important, but have you all thought of like what maybe your largest concerns are? From top to bottom, because like to me, the light, I don't live there, right?
Short,
But the
short of
lighting,
taking the rotary out, that
Short
would
of-
be number one.
all right. Number two. I mean, because
I think that's 1 through 3, actually.
Yeah, but I'm trying to determine, like, is it the ramp? Is it the lighting? Because the lighting to me seems most jarring, but I don't live there. So
for me and my personal living situation, absolutely, it's number one for me is the safety concern about my use of that sidewalk. So that is number one. So if the board would vote to remove that, the irony is there used to be a crosswalk across there, and when the other island was there, DPW decided that it wasn't safe and they took it out. Now they've put something in that isn't safe for me. So that's number one. Number two is the lighting, because and all the things that I've heard about turning down the lights and all that is not going to do it. First of all, I asked that one light that they put in be moved further back so I don't see it out my window. And the existing light is still there. So it's not a big hassle to change that. And that would open up that sky a little bit. But any others that we could take out at that point so that I can lie in my bed and look at the flag in the same way that I used to. I mean, that means an awful lot to me. And, really wasn't necessary. And then, as Stephen said, I think that you're going to find in the long run, the only way to resolve this problem, and I have lots of experience in studying it. They never did the one experiment that I wanted them to do, but now that we have the T at the other end of Mass Ave and Harrington Road, the traffic coming that way has slowed down tremendously, because I see it, because they can no longer come from the lights at Worthing Road and come all the way through and just take a left there and keep going. They have to stop and take a left. And that was huge. So I'd have to look at it and say the third, but I guess what I would say to you, Doug, is what I would hope is that the board would let DPW know that you are okay with us working with them to try and resolve some of these issues to the best that we can. Because as I was kind of somewhat surprised to see the email that they sent, because the initial response that I got was that because the board had voted on the plans, they had gone as far as they could within their realm. So to have them tell me all the reasons tell you all the reasons why you couldn't make any of the changes, that is not the same conversations I had on the street. And one in particular, for example, in taking out that crosswalk, I mean, tonight I heard it as saying, oh, it's impossible to do that. We shouldn't do that. Whereas what I was told on my property as we were looking at it is that because the island exists, all they would have to do is extend that island on both sides and then remove the ramp on the Masonic Lodge and remove the ramp in front of our house, which would mean they'd have to do a little bit of concrete work, but that it could be done. And because they haven't paved the road yet, they don't have to dig up the road and all that because it's going to get paved over anyway. So that's sort of one of the simple things. And, you know, for me as the Battle Green as a whole, the way that the lighting was placed did not take any consideration to what they were putting it in front of. So there's now, when you stand on the Battle Green, there's a light right in front of, you know, 1 Harrington, which is one of the most photographed iconic symbols. Same thing with the church. There's one right in front of the church, whereas if they just use the existing light pole and put the light there, we wouldn't have that issue. So I gave you 2. I'll have to think about what my third one is if taking out the rotary at this point isn't an option, but I think we'll be there at some point.
Mr. Sandy.
Back to the safety concern. When we were walking around, I had the impression that the safety concern was mainly that the sidewalk went down and back up. Am I remembering that correctly?
You are, because they need that ramp in order to meet ADA standards. So having the crosswalk there at all requires that ramp. But also just from an aesthetic standpoint, in terms of changing the landscaping, people walk right now into our fence, and there's very little room between where our garden will hopefully be replanted and where, you know, where that sidewalk comes in, you know, where the crosswalk comes in. So that's.
But the real issue from your perspective is that the sidewalk is dipping down and coming back up. And,
correct.
And the crosswalk is given as a reason why that's occurring. But if the crosswalk stayed, but that sidewalk was level, would that address your problem?
Only partially, but yes.
Do that with ADA?
You can't do
I don't know whether
Yeah.
you can do it with ADA or not. I'm just,
right.
But your main concern for your safety is having a level sidewalk.
Multiple times, especially at night, without even any snow or ice, I've almost fallen walking between my driveway and home. And, you know, it's one of those road.
It's 25 years of going that path.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you're not thinking about it and you're down and you're up.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was remembering it correctly.
Any other questions? Comments?
I'd have a comment. I know it's not on your top of your list, and you said you're not even sure you would pursue the fence, but I do tend to agree with you that the town ought. I know when you're going to HDC, my experience with the HDC is they're very much interested in talking to the folks who are actually going to be making the change much more than the actual homeowners. And so if the town is saying they would be willing to make some changes, I would hope that the town could go and assist.
And pay for it.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. And I believe the town has said that they'd be willing to support moving forward with this. Right. I think the question is, filing the action is the homeowner, and then the town would go forward and support it.
So just to be clear, I don't have any problem with filing the information. I have a problem with paying the application fee, which is for the notice in the paper and all that, if we decide that we'll go forward with
it. Right. I believe I'm seeing DPW and town manager say that's not an issue. Right. I mean, so moving forward on that process, I think it's just have you initiate it. All right. Ms. Hay.
You know, I was going to say, I mean, I think that is actually in keeping with what we do when we do any sort of sidewalk work. If we disturb a private property, whether it's a garden, a fence, or something else, I know we have, you know, made homeowners whole. And in this case, making them whole includes having to go through HDC. So I think to my mind, that should not have been, you know, a big decision, actually. I think that's pretty straightforward. And I guess I will just echo what I said before, which is that I also have still some discomfort with that crosswalk. And I would love to just know if we can re-examine, and it may be futile. I heard what you said before, John, but I really would like to take another look at that and see if that really can be adjusted, moved. I mean, it can be eliminated, great, but whatever. I would like to re-examine that crosswalk placement. And then I'll just pile on with what you've already heard as far as the lighting. It is significant. And I think I'd like to see us see what we can do to moderate that. But I will also say that I have heard almost exclusively positive things from a traffic perspective, other than, and I understand you're living there, but just, for what it's worth, the feedback that I have gotten from people who aren't living there has been very positive about the traffic impact. But I think we can do better as a whole.
There's a difference between random passerbys and people that are there all the time.
Right. So the only few comments I want to make is I also have heard only positive comments in general. I mean, I have heard your concerns that have been raised, but I've had no other member of the public come to me with issues. I have heard the question at the coffee talk, but that's the sum total. And I recognize there is a difference between being the resident there and being a passerby. I also have had people come to me and say they actually want more lighting. I don't think we should put in more lighting. I do think that we need to take a look at the existing lighting and see how it can be tuned. And I want to see, what comes out of it. But I'm not really open to the idea of any massive relighting plan, right? There might be some small adjustments that could be made, and I'd like to see how those flesh out. But in general, from people who walk and people who're driving, the clarity from the lighting has been complemented. And again, I realize that's if it takes time for people to get used to a change, and it's not as I think Mr. McKenna, you just said, it's 27 or 30 years of habit of walking. It takes time before there is a change in perception of what's there. Mr. Sandine.
Just reflecting on the comments that Mr. Pato's making and remembering the comments that Mr. Lucente made about half an hour ago or something about Mr. Lucente said, we have more lighting and somehow or other it's harder to see, right? And I'm remembering we had a similar situation when we put the bump out across from Monroe Center. We had people saying that this was a problem. They couldn't see that bump out. And rather than putting lots of lighting there, we put some markings, some reflective markings on the curbing. And maybe there's something that can be thought of there as well. We could possibly reduce lighting, but also make the curbing more visible. So I don't know if that's possible or not, but it's at least one thing that the town has done in the past for a similar situation.
I think it's interesting that we're concerned about not lighting the night sky, but we're not thinking so much about the people that live on the ground.
Mr. Vicente.
I just think it's a lighting pollution. It feels like lighting pollution to me, and they've talked about some noise pollution as well. For a town that prides itself in trying to eliminate pollution, we've caused a different type of pollution in this situation. And I'm hopeful that we can at least move some of this around. And I don't think they asked for a complete, remove all the lights situation. This is a few small changes to help mitigate this scenario. So I would love us to be able to make some of those changes. I agree with Ms. Hay. I'd love to see this crosswalk scenario eliminated. There is a lot of stuff going on here. I think undoubtedly, Mr. Kelly used to always say the confusion is good. It causes people to slow down. It does, but this sort of goes a little far in the confusion area to me. I just think it's too many elements and repetitive elements as well. So, hindsight's 2020, and I think when we all looked at the plan, it looks good on paper. One of the things the plan never really showed was the crosswalk with the bike path. It was not on any of the plans because they cut the line, on the draft of those, or maybe if it was in a draft, I just didn't see it, but there's a lot happening here. And if we could reduce that, a lot of light happening, a lot of crosswalks happening, I would be happy to see that happen.
Right, listen, I just want to clarify. I think that there's an examination of the lumens, how much light is being generated, which is different from a re-examination of all the light poles. What I had heard said was something about there's about 3 times as many lights as there were before. And to me, what I heard was looking to remove light poles. Right?
So if I can just clarify, it's somewhere in between. So there are a few actual light pole changes that would make a huge difference for our enjoyment. But I'm not looking to redo all of the light poles. I also am not confident that any of the notions about dimming the lights or anything like that is going to help, because, as I said, the view to the flagpole is blocked by these lights. So, why we need a couple of lights on the ground in front of my house, plus the big one that's over the intersection. And then some of the other ones were just sort of moving. And again, I was told at the time when I raised these initially that any of these changes could be made. Some of them would be more complicated than others, obviously. But nothing was so set in stone that it couldn't be addressed. So I go back to what I said before. I think the best thing would be if you would be willing to ask Dave and John to talk with us and figure out what it is we'd like to propose, other than the crosswalk, which we know we want to eliminate, in terms of the lighting, and see where we can come to some agreements. Because sometimes he's talked to us about issues that we had, and we were able to say, you know what, it's okay the way it is. But what we're enduring right now is not tenable. So whatever we can do to improve that would be great.
And I'm just reflecting on, we haven't talked about it in a half an hour, but there was an idea of actually putting some blocking on the light going towards your house might help a little bit.
But I don't see that as making any kind of difference, because I'm still at eye level looking at the top of the light pole.
Okay, so I was just thinking about light coming into your house, and so
well, I didn't even mention that every car now that goes around that rotary, the lights shine in the house.
All right. So, colleagues, this was an information session. This is not on our agenda for decision making. I'd like you to take away these comments. I want to thank the McKennas for coming in and explaining their issues for us. And I'm going to ask members of the board to send reflections in to Mr. Malloy on how you might perceive going forward, so that then we can structure a subsequent discussion. Right? And Mr. Malloy can't take direction from us as individuals, but I'd like for him to be able to sort of get a sense of where the board is, and then we can structure a conversation here.
Mr. Patter, I just want to say, in light of the open meeting laws and in light of how public this whole discussion is, that notion makes me very uncomfortable. I would request that if you want to put it on the agenda for another time to discuss it publicly, that would be okay. But either, as I said before, you could ask staff to work with us to try and work on something together. If you don't want to do that and you want to know where the board stands, we want to hear how the board stands. And we don't want that done through an individual notes to the town manager.
I hear you, Ms. McKenna, but I would like the board to send material to Mr. Malloy. We will have a conversation at this table so that there is a public discussion.
So can we be copied on all of them?
It's your choice if you would like to. I can't mandate, but anyway, I want to thank the board for its discussion and concerns, and the McKennas for their presence, and staff for giving us an update on where we are. With that,
Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Mr. Petto, I assume you were looking at a recess because we're at 3 hours.
Yes, I'm also looking, probably adjusting the agenda. Let's take a 5-minute break and we'll be back. Okay, now that you can hear me, I will restate that. I am going to skip item number 4, the select board goals, and move immediately to the recommended budget and financing plan. If we don't go for too long, I'll come back for a few minutes on the select board goals just to touch on it, but not to have substantive discussions tonight. So we were going to go to approving the fiscal year 2025 recommended budget and finance plan. Mr. Malloy and Ms. Kosnoff will lead us through this. Ms. Kosnoff?
Yes, I will take it away. Thank you. So tonight we are here to approve the program summary of the budget. Just to kind of do a quick overview of how we got up to this point. As you all know, we started budget development in September. We went through multiple summit meetings. We went through select board hearings. We went through many meetings with finance committees, with town staff and town manager, and have received comments on the budget along the way. So in January, the 25th of January, 3 weeks ago, we presented the White Book, which is the town manager's preliminary recommended budget, and have taken a little bit of feedback since then. And so tonight, what you're going to see is a program summary that was the same as what was presented at that point in time, with just some key changes, mostly for new information that has become available over the last 3 weeks. And I am going to just kind of run through the list of those items just so everybody's clear on what those are. One important point that I do want to make is that the way that the new revenue for fiscal 25 is being allocated between the municipal departments and school department is not changed since that January 25th summit. So both the municipal departments and the school department have the same amount of operating budget for this version as they did in the last one. So I just wanted to note that that did not change. We did have changes in both revenue and expenses. And overall, most of those netted out to be other areas other than those two budgets, either shared expenses or our set-asides or our capital program. All right, so just quickly, and just in the packet, there were some attachments. There was the program summary that we're going to be asked to vote tonight. And then there was also a lined version that showed all of the changes that occurred from the last one till this one. Also included with the current program summary were both the overviews of the water and sewer budgets and the recommended capital program. And again, none of those projects have changed. Nothing has really changed in the capital plan other than just the financing. It's still all the same projects that were originally proposed. It's just how we're going to pay for them that is tweaked a little bit over the last couple of weeks. So just in summary, on the revenue side, there were two changes. Importantly, free cash was finally certified by the Department of Revenue. Thankfully, it's nice to have that final number going into town meeting. So the final certified free cash was $17,032,132. This is a little more than $500,000 over the last version, in which we had $16.5 million as a placeholder. So we did really apply that free cash to our capital program. That allowed us to reduce some debt financing of some of those items that were originally proposed to be done with debt. And then the other item, which we actually touched on at the last summit, was that our state aid came in lower than we had originally projected. So when we built the original budget, we were basing state aid Chapter 70 off of $60 per student. The governor's budget only had $30 of increased aid per student, which is sort of the minimum that's allowed under the DESE formula. We are still hopeful that that number will eventually come up, but there are no guarantees. And so we felt that we should really base the budget off of the current guidance that was given from the state. So we did have to decrease our state aid revenue by $132,000. So those are the two changes that have happened in revenue. On the expense side, there's a few changes. The final Minuteman assessment also came in. That was voted by the Minuteman School Committee, and the final assessment for fiscal 25 has been approved and was sent to us. That is $76,000 less than we were holding. So that's great. It's a little bit of expense savings, which frees up some budget capacity. The other big item that happened, which we discussed earlier tonight, was the debt issuance. So we did just issue $9.5 million of debt last Wednesday. We got a very good true interest cost on that of 2.25%. I would say that when we built the original budget, I was only anticipating issuing about $4 million worth of debt. And we were advised by our financial advisors that if we had anything else that we would want to add to that issue, that a bond closer to $10 million was going to be more marketable and more favorable in terms of the results than a $4 million bond. And so there were several items that I had anticipated issuing ban anticipation notes for in June that we were able to pull into this issue. The one difference that makes is it increases. So I will say overall, we did not change the total debt service budget compared to what you saw before for the general fund. The total amount of debt service is the same. There were flips between the principal, interest, and temporary financing items. But because of some of the other changes that we made, the debt service, we didn't have to change the total amount. It came when we reduced some other items and increased the amount of free cash, it all was able to kind of even out, came very close. So that total debt service number is the same. On the water and sewer side, that is the one change that you would see in those budgets compared to what we presented in the white book. Debt service for water and sewer did increase because we pulled a few new things into this debt issuance. This is debt that we would have had to issue within the next 12 months anyway. It's just pulling it up 1 year, which means that we will have the first principal payment in fiscal 25 instead of fiscal 26. But those projects are already well underway and again, would have needed to be financed in the very near future anyway. So that kind of, all of that debt service really plays into the capital plan. Again, the free cash. One change, big change that I do want to point out in the financing plan and the total project cost is 173 Bedford Street. And I know we've also discussed this multiple times at other meetings, but the original proposed amount for renovating 173 Bedford Street in the capital plan was $6 million. We have decreased it in this recommended budget to $4.2 million. The difference there is representative of not installing an all-electric HVAC system in 173 Bedford. It would be just basically renovating the existing fossil fuel system. But that is a decrease of $1.8 million. Given that the future of this building and its uses are still sort of uncertain, and the fact that it's intended to just be swing space for the next 5 to 10 years in this plan, we thought it made sense to not spend, $1.8 million on a high-end system that may not have a life of even 10 years. So that is what has been recommended in here. And then there were just a few tweaks to things, again, I noted between debt financing and cash financing. So the details of that will be available in the motions in the book very soon. Other than that, the only really tweaks that we made, there were 2 minor tweaks in the municipal budget that we made based off of some feedback we got to the board on program improvements and ARPA funding. So there were 2 items. Well, there was one item that we had recommended with ARPA funding that had a one-time cost. This is the Tyler cash sharing module that had a one-time cost of $105,000 requested from ARPA, and it had an ongoing $40,000 ongoing cost that we built into the budget. Because we didn't approve the one-time cost, we don't need the ongoing cost. And so that $40,000 was removed from the finance department budget. On the flip side, we had an item that was requested from ARPA to do a one-time review of our insurance. And I'm sorry, I'm like, the name of the item is escaping me, but basically to procure our liability insurance for next year. That was a $25,000 request that we had recommended originally from ARPA. Again, that one was not approved. That is something that we have to do. And so that $25,000 is now incorporated to be coming from the general fund. So with all of these changes and all of the moving pieces, one thing that we did do to balance the budget, we had previously had $1 million set aside of unallocated free cash. We dipped into $45,000 of that in order to rebalance the budget with all of these other changes going on. I know that we always say that typically we don't recommend balancing the budget with free cash, and we've worked pretty hard to move that out. But for $45,000, we felt that was reasonable. 25 of it is a one-time expense in that item, and so we felt that this is a reasonable way. We also say that that 1 million is set aside for the specific case of things like state aid coming in lower than anticipated. And so in this case, that was how we rebalanced. So those are the highlights of the changes. The budget overall is still balanced. I think it still incorporates a lot of the board's goals and priorities, and certainly we were able to still incorporate quite a few program improvement requests and other items. I think both the town, the municipal departments and the school department are satisfied that this is a budget that's going to work for us in 25, and we are looking to move forward. So in terms of next steps, we would ask that you approve, which will get carried forward into the motion, column D of the program summary. Overall, I mean, you could approve the entire program summary, but it's really the items that are in column D, which is the recommended amount that will be pulled forward into the town meeting motions. And then we do still anticipate releasing the Brown book in the near future, the full printed book. We are still trying to build ourselves until next Friday, not this coming Friday, but until February 23rd. We are very much hoping that it will come out before then, possibly as early as this Friday. But just again, in case there's any last minute tweaks or things we need to make. We would also ask the board to just give us the leeway if there are substantive changes that need to be made, that you allow staff to make those as well.
Thank you, Ms. Kosnoff. And thank you for all the adroit manipulation to get this to where we need it to be in time to bring it to town meeting. Colleagues, any questions or comments? Mr. Sandin and then Ms. A.
So I agree with Mr. Pato. Thank you so much for all the work you've done and the juggling that has gone on to pull this off. As my colleagues may not be surprised, I do believe that we should be complying with our board's goals to transition to 100% renewable energy and to be electrifying our buildings as we move forward. So I'm concerned about the proposal to change the capital request from $6 million to $4.2 million by removing an all-electric heating system. So I know Ms. Kosnoff made the comment that perhaps, this is a reasonable thing to think about in this situation because we may only be using this for less than 10 years or something along that lines. And to me, that just makes the case that I've been bringing to the board before, which is, should we be doing a lease rather than a renovation of 173? So at least from my perspective, I think if we're saying, this investment is for less than 10 years, then whether it's $6 million or $4.2 million, I would prefer that we be looking at leasing. So that my request would be that we continue with what was the original plan, which was a plan to make this all electric, but to eventually not spend that $6 million at all and to lease for the property.
So Mr. Sandin has put that on the table. Ms. Kosnoff, I just want to check. Currently, we've adjusted the budget for that, but the proposed funding source for Article 27, which was 173 Bedford Street, that was coming out of cash capital or?
So no, it was actually originally proposed to be fully debt financed. Given the new cash capital that we got from free cash, we did apply a small amount, it's a couple $100,000 to cash finance, but the remainder is to be debt financing. I could say, I think fairly comfortably at this point, that given the timing of that project, and we probably would not need to adjust the budget. The program summary is approved because it's primarily being debt financed, that we would not debt finance the entire project this June, which would essentially, it wouldn't require us to modify this right now. So we could change that. But it would obviously impact future debt service and will have an impact on the 5-year projections and the other things in the Brown Book. So you could still approve this tonight, but it would require us to make some other changes.
Thank you for getting to the essence of my question.
Yes.
Colleagues? I think I went to Ms. Hay and then Ms. Barry.
Thank you. So I will also echo the thank you. I know it's a lot of balls moving all at the same time, and you and Ms. Impen are doing a really great job of keeping them going. So thank you. And I know it's been a hard lift for her first season as well. So thank you both. My question goes to benefits. The last time we talked, we sort of had a surprise of we'd been carrying a number. We were told to up the percent to 9. And has that ball landed yet? Or are we still just carrying a very high, we hope it doesn't go that bad?
So the answer to that is we are still carrying the very high hope it doesn't go that bad. We anticipate that sometime at the end of this month, we will get the final GIC rates. But we are still holding a 9.6% increase in premiums, which is what they had given as guidance for us. So we are still at that point. And that is still one of the big unknown questions. Obviously, the budget could be adjusted downward later. We could reappropriate to something else, or that money would just fall to free cash at the end of the year if it didn't end up getting used.
Thank you. Ms. Barry?
Thank you, Mr. Pato. So I just want to add my thanks to you and Ms. Impink and to Mr. Malloy, Ms. Axtell, and all of our senior staff. It seems there's very few weeks, I'm not even sure if there are actually plural weeks, when you guys aren't working on a budget. And it is the single most important thing we do and we approve sitting at this table. I just wish we approved it earlier in the meeting so the town could understand what we're doing here. But I really do appreciate all the work that went into this. You know, every year there is a different nuance, a different challenge, a different curveball, and you guys have never failed to rise to the occasion to find it and to deal with it and make it work. And you make it look so easy, all of you as a team. So it's really good teamwork. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Mr. Lucente.
Thank you. Question on sort of the budget development and ARPA, because I think obviously we threw maybe a curveball. Last, I just want to make sure that you mentioned 2 items, the Tyler cashiering module and then the general liability insurance consultant. Were those the only 2 sort of post ARPA discussion impacts that came out of our last meeting? And I just want to confirm that there was nothing else that was in the write-up, but I wanted to make sure that we were.
So the only other thing that sort of got put on the back burner, I think, is the water and sewer rate study. We did not build that water and sewer rate study into this budget. It has sort of been left to the side for now. It is something that we could either bring back for next year, or if we change, wanted to reevaluate ARPA or some other, funding at some point. But I think that's the only other item that I'm clear on that we sort of have tabled, I would say. And I would just make one other comment on the water and sewer budget. So the debt service, because we accelerated things by 1 year, did pop up quite a bit for fiscal 25. The one thing that I would say about that, another big unknown right now is the MWRA assessments. Those final assessments don't usually come out until June. Right now, we have a very large placeholder in here of 10%. I think that that's extremely aggressive. And I would say that with the most recent, data that we got from MWRA is that our percent of the total system actually decreased quite a bit over the last calendar year, which is the base for the fiscal 25 assessment. And so, that might be something that we can consider adjusting later. Given the increased debt service and the fact that we're actually adding headcount to both the water and sewer enterprise, I was a little uncomfortable trying to put another item in there right now. So we held on it, but it might be something we could do later on.
So with that said, if there's a fall town meeting, would that be something we would be able to adjust at that point?
Yes.
We would have all the pieces of the puzzle to know
Yes.
what we should do. Okay. That's good to hear. Thank you.
And I just want to follow up on that slightly. I know the board had some conversations about commercial water rates, volume water rates. Those are things that would be examined in the context of water and rate sewer.
Yes.
So by not doing that, we have, unless we come back in the fall,
Yeah.
we're deferring any substantive action. Okay.
Or unless you wanted to reevaluate ARPA, but.
Yeah, right. Okay. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'm going to move to approve the fiscal year 2025 recommended budget and financing plan as shown in column D of the program summary, and authorize staff to make non-substantive changes in preparing and finalizing the full Brown book. Ms. Barry?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. It is unanimous, 5-0. Thank you. All right. So colleagues, I said I wanted to come back for just a moment on the goal setting piece. We had a conversation at our last meeting. I asked members to edit their elements and submit it to Ms. Kozanov, and then we collated that, and I added narrative for the I'm sorry, Ms. It is late. Yeah.
But our goal is not one of them.
Well, our goals are on her plate too, but in a different way. Thank you. And yes, separating my visual area, it will hopefully trigger the right names coming out. So I just want to call the board's attention to, there is narrative that I use to replace the terse terms for things like, what I did was base it on what our shared principles as a community that we've expressed in the past. There was one that had been missing before, which spoke to sustainability, but we had sustainability elements in there, but I recapitulated that in the narrative. My intent is to use that table at the top, which are the goals definitions, and that narrative, but not our detailed work items, as what will feed the web page, and eventually we'll work on presentation niceties, but that's the basic content. There were a few changes to labels because I tried to make it read as English a little bit clearer. I tried not to change the intent. If you notice any change in intent, please let me know and we'll fix it. There was one item which I tried to clean up language on housing, which is our #1 priority goal. And I got a member sent feedback in saying the language has moved further away from clearly specifying affordable housing generation. And so I want the board to think about that. I don't want to discuss it tonight. I just want you to go think about that so that when we bring it back, you can come prepared with maybe some candidate language, because I have failed, as I told you I would, in getting everything done. So that's all I want to do tonight. But I will take your comments. Let's go there right now. Let's start with Ms. Hay and then Ms. Barry.
So I hadn't heard that feedback, but I agree with it. And I think there's actually a relatively easy fix if you want me to just send it to Kim.
Yeah,
I can do that.
Because I don't want to open the door to editing tonight.
Yeah. Okay. I think we can just add that right in the top line. I'll send that to you.
Great. Ms. Barry?
Thank you. So I believe I have to write about our goals for our town meeting report, which is due soon. So I need an update from everyone of where they think they are with their goal. You don't want me to write that because I'll write what I think I know, which probably isn't right. So, and you had mentioned that in a previous meeting.
That's right. That had been previously identified as we were each going to send that just retrospective statement of here's where things are, a report. and that Ms. Barry would collate. Please do that. Otherwise, you will find yourself in the middle of a report that says you are bicycling to the moon.
Can I ask for it like by Friday? Because I know you're going to be away and this is due right after you're back.
Yeah, so let's shoot for Friday, and for those of us who will miss Friday, Monday morning.
Yeah,
Okay. Mr.
thank you.
Vicente.
Just the footnote, which you mentioned, the intent is to get rid of that footnote.
Oh, yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Okay, that was just for us for
That
tonight.
was for you to read
Okay,
tonight.
I just,
right. No, I
That's
don't want to
awesome.
put on the web a footnote says, we
One
think
member,
we've said,
right, okay.
we've said the wrong thing here.
Okay, yeah. No, I just want to make sure we weren't footnoting different, that these are the different opinions of different board
No,
members,
no.
because it's our collective voice or a majority of us that want this.
I am so pleased you read the details.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Because we're almost at 10 o'clock and
In my goal section, I'm looking at things that could be cleaned up. Just, they look kind of weird when they're printed the way they are. So maybe I can make some sort of graphical suggestions,
looking forward to some edits there.
indentions and stuff.
Yes,
that's all.
condensing would be nice. Okay. So we are having one conversation and I see nothing else on our agenda. So where am I? Yes, we are at the end. Before I ask to adjourn, I want to announce that our next regularly scheduled meeting of the board will be on Monday, February 26th at 6:30 p.m. via hybrid participation. Right, and today is our work session, so that is left over. I now move that we adjourn. Ms. Barry?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, it is unanimous. Any nays? No, 5-0. And we are adjourned.